And welcome into Shooting the Breeze. I'm Samir Kumar, joined with Tim Mohop, who is in his new home in Nebraska right now. It's been a little while since we've been on. Both of us have transitioned into new roles in our life. There's been a lot of turnover the past couple of months. We do apologize for, being off the air for a little bit, but it feels so good to be back on, man. Like, I feel so good to speak into this microphone. I've just I felt empty the past couple of months not doing Shooting the Breeze. I've missed it, Tim. What do you got going on, man?
Man, I got a lot going on here too. Samir, I think you said it best. We have a lot of change in the last month or so for both of us. Well, 2 months now. Yeah, no, big things on both ends, and you got your big time role coming in at the NBA, and I'm out here pounding the pavement for junior hockey in the middle of the country. So I think both changes for the better for sure. But yeah, it definitely took a toll on perhaps our obviously our schedule for our podcast. So it's good to be back. Good to be back on air.
Absolutely, Tim. I think you hit it best when you just said that. But you know, I'm so glad we started this podcast. Let me start with this. I think without this podcast, I would not be where I'm at right now. Like, for the past few months and for the past year and change, actually, like I've just, I struggled coming out of college, finding a job, finding steady employment, but I just kind of hit a certain point where I was like, I need to start being more proactive. I need to start a podcast, and I think Tim is the best guy to start one with, given our close proximity to each other, our close friendship together, and our goals. I figured he'd be the best person to start a podcast with. So us reached out and said, "Hey Tim, both of us trying to get into this industry. Good times in college, and we'll have good times ahead in life. Let's do a podcast together." And then he was like, "Yeah, I'm with that." So this summer kind of gave me more of a purpose. To start Shooting the Breeze. That's where it was born. Both of us took a little while to come up with the name, but given that we started Shooting the Breeze, this podcast, and you know, our desire to get guests on, I reached out to Damon Amendolara, who is from Warwick. He's been on this podcast before, and big time guy at CBS Sports Radio and across the broadcasting world. He contributes to SNY as well. So reached out to DA, Warwick guy. Took him a few weeks, which is fine, to get back to me about being a guest, but he did. He's a couple Hudson Valley guys. I'd love to. So we got him on, and then, in the same time span, I applied to WFAN and CBS, and, got the interview eventually a little over a month later, and I told the guy, you know, I had DA on my podcast, and the guy just so happened to be a board op on DA's show, so that worked perfectly. So, I hope that contributed somewhat to my interview. I got the job, obviously, and, maybe that played a role, maybe it didn't, but hey, I'd like to think it did because, that got me my foot in the door in this industry, and, being able to contribute to those two companies for a little bit was awesome. I recently left due to me accepting a new job at the NBA, but I learned a lot from WFAN and CBS Sports Radio in my short time there, and met a lot of great people that will stay with me for a little while as I go into more of my professional career. But forever grateful to WFAN and CBS Sports Radio right there for giving me a chance. I just got a better opportunity, and just keep building it up. And WFAN or CBS Sports Radio, maybe down the road I get another opportunity with them, hopefully on air.
Well, Samir, you said it, proactive, not reactive. It's been a theme here at my job over in the Midwest, and I think that's the attitude you got to have coming into this industry, and learning from your experiences and me learning from mine. I think that's the message, taking it forward. It's just you gotta be preemptive. You gotta be the dog on the hunt, really, right here. It's not to be too cliche about it, but that's kind of where the jobs lie in this world. And that's not just applicable to broadcasting, but everywhere, but especially broadcasting. And the fact that we're both following paths we wanted to get on in the first place is great. And I'm sure from you being at WFAN, which I've had a limited experience with as an intern as well, is you get a good foot in the door there, and then you're quickly able to find a spot in NBA, which is fantastic. And it's great to see that. It's great to see the moves into that industry, because it's hard to get your foot in the door. That's not to sound too much like our college professors and the advisors that have helped very much along the way. I'm not trying to take away from them, but then we both had some really good ones. But at the end of the day, it's good to see that this is helping you, and I'd say definitely helping me. Stay sharp, and it's good to be back. Like we both said, I think it's good to be able to keep the vocal cords going strong here. I keep them locked up until the weekend when I have my hockey games, but a couple interviews in between. But it's great to talk, and you're gonna have to help me out here, Samir. I've been so embroiled in the hockey world. I've done a little homework here. I know the basics of what we're going to talk about today, but it's pretty impressive and how much has happened in the last 2 months that has caught me off guard a little bit. And some people, and to be fair, I mean, some of these stories, everyone's been caught off guard. So, I mean, I know you, with your pulse on the NBA nowadays, you've been at the front lines here, and some of the action as it happens. But I don't know. You want to start first with Jimmy Butler. I mean, you and I have talked about him over the past couple of episodes of Shooting the Breeze, and find that we get a little bit of a turning point in that storyline. Obviously, with free agency on the horizon as well, there could be some further things down the road for Jimmy. But the move to Philly, certainly one that is a bit of a calculated gamble for the Sixers, and then of course Minnesota seems to have removed a weight from their shoulders, and Karl Anthony Towns is balling again.
Basically, been watching a lot of Minnesota Timberwolves games, but before I get to Jimmy Butler, I'd like to kind of feed off what Tim was saying. Man, it is hard to get in foot in the door in this industry. Experienced it firsthand. At times, want to give up. I've thought about switching career paths. I just thought wasn't going to get a foot in the door in this industry. I thought it was just too tough. But, you just got to stay with it. You got to find ways to kind of be proactive and, just find ways to kind of reinvent yourself. Stay occupied. Stay busy in finding a job in this industry, because there's so many other people you're going up against. It's difficult, but just hang in there, do the best you can, and your break will come. I'm telling you from a first-hand experience, if you put in the work, your opportunity will come for sure. I just want to put that out for anybody that's trying to get into this industry, because it's not easy, but the work you put in will be rewarding at the end, and you'll get there. I promise you. But with Jimmy Butler, man, past couple months, man, it's just stuff I've never seen before in the NBA. I mean, maybe I've seen it, but to this level, especially with the media that's going on nowadays, it just looks like never before seen stuff with Jimmy Butler and his situation in Minnesota. He comes into practice saying, "I need the ball. You guys need me. You guys can't win without me." That's just stuff that it's just crazy to me. Like, coming in and getting away with it. I would think that it would warrant a suspension or something along those lines within the Minnesota Timberwolves organization, but apparently not. They want to keep him. They want to keep him happy, and they want to try to win with him. But in the early part of the season, it just didn't look like the case. They didn't look like a team that could coexist with Jimmy Butler on the roster any longer, because it was taken away from Karl Anthony Towns' performance. He just looked like a shell of himself earlier this year. He had a couple of good games, but watching him firsthand, he just looked like a player that lacked confidence, a player that didn't want to go hard to the hole or shoot that wide open three. He looked like somebody who was kind of playing second fiddle. He didn't want to be the man anymore with Jimmy Butler on the roster. He played scared, and much of the same was the case with Andrew Wiggins as well. Both of them just looked like players that were going to defer to Jimmy Butler. So I think that was a good move of Minnesota to get him out of there. It was much of an addition by subtraction from their roster, because now Karl Anthony Towns is balling out in Minnesota again. He had a great game last night against Anthony Davis and New Orleans Pelicans. He had timely blocks. He had that big block at the end of the game that led to that Andrew Wiggins slam on the other end. That momentum shifted in Minnesota's favor, and that won them the game, in my opinion. Otherwise, it was getting close. New Orleans looked like they could, have a run in them and really just win that game at the end. But those plays by those two guys just at the end of the game really set the tone, for the rest of the game for them. That just gave them the momentum swing that they desperately needed. Karl-Anthony Towns, just his defense, he looked more energetic on that side of the floor. He didn't look scared to go up against Anthony Davis, who many people think Anthony Davis is now becoming the best player in the NBA. But he didn't look. It didn't look like that last night. He didn't look scared to get up in his skin, block his shots, and go hard at him on offense. He looked like he was back to being Karl-Anthony Towns, the same player that owners and coaches around the league said they would want to build their team around him. He looked like he's getting back to that level, and I love it for him, man. I think all along the Timberwolves made the right decision to keep him in the fold and max him out for the next 5 years, because this is the guy you want to build your team around. Karl-Anthony Towns is a mix in a 7-footer of somebody that can shoot, drive to the rim, and his defense needs work a little bit, but it looks like he's getting better at that now from what I saw last night. It looks like he's starting to realize that he needs to move around a little bit more on that side and get quicker on his feet so that he can get those timely blocks. Looks like he's improving on that end. There's still work that needs to be done at the end, but what this guy offers you on offense with his hook shots, with his post play, with his three-point shooting, and his hard drives to the rim, he looks like the type of guy you want to build your team around. He gives you such a wide array of offenses that will demand double teams, that will open up other opportunities for his teammates, and ultimately just be one of the better players in this league. I think he's getting back to that level now with Jimmy Butler out of there.
Well, let me tell you something, Samir. I know the secret. I know what happened. I know everything about Minnesota because I have the inside source of myself. It's just a rite of passage in the NBA season. I didn't know about it until this year because this is the first year in fantasy basketball. I started a week or two into the season, so I got a little bit of a delayed start and had to wait to draft my guy, Karl-Anthony Towns. It seems that when Cat is drafted by my fantasy team, that's when this flip goes on for him. So definitely going to take credit for all Cat's accomplishments in the last couple of days with his newfound. Well, I shouldn't say newfound. I should say his finding his game once again, and it's because I drafted him. So you're welcome, Minnesota. You're welcome, Thibs. That's because of me. But in all seriousness, no. I mean, it's good to see. This is kind of a Minnesota team that, and I can kind of relate it to my feelings as a hockey fan with being a Buffalo Sabres fan, but not to go off on that tangent. Just kind of having a lot of young pieces in place, but not seeing it really click the way everyone thought it might. When it was Zach LaVine and Andrew Wiggins and Karl-Anthony Towns, they try and go get a veteran, and Jimmy Butler, and Buffalo did something similar with a player named Evander Kane, and didn't have it really fit with the room, and certainly saw some things that turned into a little bit of selfishness. And not saying it's a perfect match by any means, but with Jimmy Butler kind of trying to run the show and be option A in the offense, when you have guys, especially like Karl-Anthony Towns, who's so versatile and so good in every facet. He's one of the best big men there is, just because of what his versatility brings to the table and what it opens up for your offense, and just in general what he brings defensively. You mentioned the timely blocks, and he has the physical, size and the intangibles and that attitude when he's on to just dominate the court. So I like it because I like seeing the Timberwolves kind of starting to get seeing that potential a little bit. I think they have a ways to go still, but it seems like a problem was removed. You said it best, I think, in addition by subtraction. We'll see how Philadelphia handles this. They have a lot of expectation themselves. Some already rumblings that maybe there's some trouble in that locker room in terms of Ben Simmons and Embiid not necessarily being the best of buddies, and I don't think they have to be for there to be success. But at the end of the day, adding another potential, piece of dynamite into that locker room as far as attitude goes, just again, this is based off rumbling, so I can understand if that's unsubstantiated as far as the Simmons and Embiid relationship. But it seems to me that Philly's kind of turning quickly into a team that wants to win right now, and maybe they're afraid of something coming up down the road where they feel like they might have a bit of a split and fracture in that room. So I don't know. I mean, succeeding in Philly is hard. It's one of those big cities where a lot is expected, and if the job isn't done, you're going to hear about it, just like New York, like Boston, like LA. You're going to hear a lot of the not only the media but the fans, and you're going to see lots of criticism heading your way, regardless of who's in charge and who's on the floor. So I'm curious. I can't say for sure at the moment, what this means for the East in the grand scheme of things, but I think for sure it adds an element of intrigue, and we have plenty of that in the NBA every season, every day. I mean, you turn around and look around, and there's a new drama popping up everywhere, and I'm excited. I think just looking at a team like Minnesota, who's not a big market as far as basketball goes, it's a good market. It's just I've having been there and having worked in the hockey world now. Hockey is the first love out there, and it's good to see the basketball team pick up because those Minnesota fans are diehards. I mean, you can look at the Vikings' recent success as kind of an example as well as how rabid that fan base can be, and I'm excited. I'm hoping moving forward that supports what was, again, at one point looked at as one of the better young nucleuses coming together, a couple years back, and again, hasn't really been the case. So I'm excited. Again, I will take credit. Again, you're welcome, Thibodeau. You're welcome, Minnesota fans. Karl Anthony Towns is once again on his rightful fantasy team, and of course, it has nothing to do with Karl Anthony's incredible talent and mindset being corrected. It's all because I took him in fantasy basketball, and that's why I think 4-0 too.
Is that right? Yeah, man. Karl Anthony Towns is just a flash in the pan now because you drafted him, so he's gonna be the best player in the NBA now because you took him. So Timothy Mulhouse right here is the reason why Karl Anthony Towns is, finding his rhythm again. But I guess in all seriousness here, though, this is boom or bust for Philadelphia right now and getting Jimmy Butler because this could either bring them to the top, he's that alpha dog that they needed with these two young guns in Simmons and Embiid, or this can make them just all hate each other by the end of the year because Jimmy Butler's in there, he's cranky about something. It's not going to like the work ethic of Embiid or Ben Simmons. He'll find faults, and then he'll try to blow that up and be like, you need me, I'm the main guy here. He needs to be the best player on his team, or, there's just a lot of ego things that Jimmy Butler is going to bring to the table that's going to try to destroy the team inside. I can see either that happening or he being that alpha dog. He loving Simmons and Embiid, and Philadelphia becomes instantly the team to beat in the East. So in that case, it's boom or bust. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. I'm no fortune teller. I can't tell you either way, but what I can tell you is that either one of those two situations is going to come up. But for Philly fans, they hope he's the alpha dog. They hope that he's the guy that brings them over the top. But real quickly, let's talk about Dario Saric and Robert Covington going on the other end to Minnesota. What they get in Robert Covington is a versatile defender, guy you can switch on anybody who can get up in your grill. He's not going to block your shots all the time, but he's going to stay with you. He's going to force you into making tough shots or tough decisions. That's exactly who he is on the defensive end, and he also stretches the floor for Minnesota. He'll provide that three-point shooting. He'll get hot in a hurry, and that was a good get from Minnesota. And as for Dario Saric, good defensively, maybe not as good as Covington, but he'll give you much of the same, maybe a few block shots, given that he tends to guard in the paint more than Covington does. But Saric is also more of an offensive specialist. He can get you three-point shots from anywhere outside the arc, and also he can get himself inside the paint as well. He'll give you some layups or some easy buckets down low. Versatile guy. Can't say that I know everything about Saric's game, but what I can tell you is that he is a great, pretty good three-point shooter, and somebody that can give you some scoring when he's hot. Both of them are kind of more on the streaky side. They're not superstars. They're not going to bring you to the next level per se individually, but they can be nice complementary pieces complementary pieces on a team like Minnesota, assuming Karl-Anthony Towns does take back that alpha dog role that he was destined to take. And if Andrew Wiggins steps up and really starts to live up to that first pick potential, and that happens, those two players all of a sudden become pieces that this Minnesota Timberwolves team desperately needed. And, like I said, Jimmy Butler on paper makes this team better, but on the court, I think Covington and Sark will actually make this team better, even though Jimmy Butler last year was a legitimate MVP candidate. And when he went down, Minnesota went down as well. But I think now this season is new. Jimmy Butler started to become more of a headache than a productive MVP candidate on the floor. So given what the circumstances are now, I think, like I said before, this was very much an addition by subtraction, getting rid of Jimmy Butler and getting these two very good players on their team.
Well, and what have we seen in the NBA when you don't have the superstar trio or what the Warriors have or what the Cavs at one point, really the Heat more had. You look at teams that are certainly not without their stars, but you look at guys like teams like Boston, who obviously has stars, but again was able to put together a really dynamic team, with just great complementary pieces, and I think you're seeing. I'm not going to say the same setup in Minnesota because there's a long way to go before they kind of achieve what Boston was building last year. But at the end of the day, when you're still talking about just as far as getting the right pieces in place to surround and support what should be your nucleus and your star player in Karl-Anthony Towns, and two, a guy who should be a good accessory to him, a player that was at one point hyped up as a huge big time prospect in Andrew Wiggins. To surround them with complementary pieces, I think is going to help that team. I think that's something that can't be overstated in basketball, especially again when you don't have a big three or a big four, or I think you saw the best of both worlds back with Popovich and the Spurs in their the better part of the last 2 decades. Obviously, that's winding down nowadays, but it's still, I think, for Minnesota a decent move, and it's something that again, if you strike the right chord, could explode moving forward. But speaking of exploding and moving forward, and maybe not moving forward, and maybe the opposite effect is what do again, Samir, you're right there in the trenches at the NBA studios or NBA network there, and ultimately with Draymond and KD, we've all heard about it. We've talked about it a million times. It's been the story of the week, and we got an apology today from Draymond. Whatever, close to apologies you're going to get from Draymond, and in that he came back from his suspension after he and KD had the floor spat that's been kind of building up in the locker room and seems to be around the team the last couple of weeks. And I don't know. I'm not usually a sensationalist. I'm not usually someone who subscribes to the what's the word? I can't think of it at the moment, but essentially, I'm not a sky is falling person if I'm a Warriors fan, and I'm not. But I don't think this is the end of the dynasty, but maybe it foreshadows a messy divorce. I mean, we've heard a lot already about with all the players that are going to be up for renewal in the next couple of years for Golden State. It's going to be a challenge to keep everybody together, and they're certainly at a point where it's probably going to be impossible to make it all work. But you hear these rumblings about Draymond questioning KD's commitment, and Draymond also reportedly wanting a max contract. And he's been a phenomenal player in their team and a valuable piece. And his critics will say that's because he's got a lot of unbelievable players around him, but he certainly plays his role and plays it really well. But here's the kick side of being that emotional player he talked about himself being today, and that's when he loses that temper and you have this dispute, and you mix that with an ego of Kevin Durant's, which has evolved over his career to the point where, yes, he's a sensational player and he's a great talent, but seems to be so easily offended when he's criticized. And granted, he's taken a lot of scrutiny and for his decision, and even before that, he was fed up with the media, and now you get this perfect storm where he's being criticized, more now from Draymond's side of things inside the locker room. And then, of course, you still get the circle about criticism from the media about everything that goes into the decision he made a couple years ago to leave OKC. But at the end of the day, I'm not one to subscribe to the notion that this is it for Golden State. I think, yeah, of course, with Curry out, you know, they're going to have some tough times. You know, I think they should still be able to make it work with, you only still have KD and Klay Thompson and Draymond out there. But certainly having some beef on the court and off the court is not going to help things. But I'm still not at all convinced that they can't tread water till they get healthy and of course turn into the Warriors we know they've been and you know a lot of teams have feared over the last 5 years, 6 years now. So I think while it might sow some seeds for problems down the road, I still think this is not an issue in the short term. I think they're going to be able to put it aside for now. You know, and I do believe when Draymond came out today and said, hey, we're focused on basketball, you know, the only team that's going to beat us is, or you're going to have to come beat us. You know, we're not going to beat us, essentially was his phrase. And I believe like a guy like Steve Kerr can legitimately get that out of those teams, and that team, I should say, moving forward. There's just too much talent there. And yes, there's a ton of ego between those two players. But I think at the end of the day, maybe it's just me trying to temper expectations for somebody else winning the championship this year, and trying to believe that that's, you know, possible by saying the opposite. But I'm still thinking that Golden State, come playoff time, is still going to be that team no one wants to see, and is still going to be that team when they want to that can totally take over a game and then just run away with things. So I don't know, Samir. Call me skeptical. I don't think this is the end of the dynasty, but I certainly think it might put a little bit of a shorten, maybe cut things a little earlier than they wanted to.
I mean, I kind of agree with what you're saying there, Tim. You know, Draymond Green and KD, that beef, I think, was a little overblown. But at the very same time, I think it could foreshadow KD's exit in 2019. I think he's going to be like, I got my rings here. You know, this is not going to be the reason why he leaves. But it could very well, down the stretch of the season, with his free agency being uncertain in the air, it can cause a little bit of unhappiness between the entire Warriors locker room, especially KD and Draymond. It could cause a divide down the line if KD's free agency still remains a big storyline later on this year. I think that's the big thing that could be the divide. Not just this one argument. I think the fact that KD has been non-committal about his future with the Warriors past this season, that might wear on some players. You know, Klay Thompson is also going to be a free agent, you know, as well, but his is kind of kept more quiet in terms of, you know, this summer. Nobody's really talking about that. Everyone's talking about KD, especially going to the Knicks, which I don't see happening, but stranger things have happened. But I think down the road, if players are non-committal about their future at Golden State, if the organization starts taking sides with one player or another, it could turn into an issue down the road. I'm not saying it will. You know, there is obviously, like you said, a lot of talent between all the guys. They will figure out something. Maybe they'll get on the same page there. But, you know, Steph is proving to be kind of injury-prone the last couple of years. You know, he gets hurt at the wrong times. Last year he was hurt in the first round, or I think even the second round of last year's playoff. He didn't play at all in the first round last year. Luckily, Golden State just has way too much firepower to withstand that. But that's not always going to be the case. There's going to be teams in the Western Conference that will catch on and maybe catch the Warriors off guard a little bit. And if the Warriors can stay healthy and on the same page, you know, there may be a team out there that could sneak in and give them a series at the very least and bring it to 6 or 7 games and, you know, kind of tire out the Warriors a little bit. There are strong teams in the Eastern Conference this year that can take down the Warriors. I think namely the Milwaukee Bucks, the Boston Celtics, and the Toronto Raptors could take down the Golden State Warriors in the finals this year if one of the 3 teams reaches. And Philadelphia, if they do figure out things with Jimmy Butler being the alpha dog there and Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons buying in, they can be a problem as well. That's to be seen. You know, it's still too early to say Philadelphia, but I'm already on the Milwaukee hype train right here. I think they have the firepower and the depth to take down the Golden State Warriors this year. Last week, the Warriors tore apart the Golden State Warriors in their home building. Giannis is playing like an absolute freak, given the name the Greek Freak this year. You know, getting points at will, getting drives to the bucket. His Euro steps, he can dunk at will, he can get any bucket. He's so long, man. Like, he can just get to the paint so easily. I don't think Draymond Green and KD is going to be enough to stop the Greek Freak. They can contain him at times, but he's just way too explosive and long this year to get those buckets in the paint. And whenever he is heavily guarded, the Bucks have a plethora of three-point shooters outside the arc. Brook Lopez is dialing in every night. He's hitting these deep Steph Curry type threes. Eric Bledsoe is buying in. He's taking a lesser role. He'll provide playmaking and shot making when he needs, but he's not demanding the ball. He's playing off the ball a lot of times this year. Same with Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton provides that flexible shooting option outside the three-point line and inside the three-point line. He'll provide mid-range shots. Chris Middleton is very much buying in. He just needs his pass, and he'll create for himself, but he's not really looking to get the ball. He'll provide when he gets the ball. And the Bucks are just Malcolm Brogdon as well, Dante DiVincenzo, John Henson. They all provide the ability to shoot the three ball and get buckets inside. They run the pick and roll, all of them, very, very well. They'll look for open looks for each other. They'll pass the ball very unselfishly. When you're bigs, Ersan Ilyasova can also shoot the three ball. They have so many guys. Tony Snell coming off the bench as a forward. So many guys that can get the three-point ball to go. And all of them playing unselfishly. All of them playing as a unit here. I'm telling you, Milwaukee is a legitimate team. They are not somebody to be slept on. They can shoot. All of them. Giannis is playing like an absolute freak. He's the table setter there. And all these guys, all playing in unison together. All of them, not looking for their own. They're looking for the best shot on their team. They'll play down the shot clock a little bit. They'll get the three-point ball if they're wide open. They create a lot of open looks just because they set a lot of screens. And, they just play unselfishly. They'll make the extra pass to get that three-point shot. That's going to create a lot of problems for the Warriors defensively, having to guard this Milwaukee Bucks team. Now, I'm not saying that the Golden State Warriors won't create problems for the Bucks, on defense as well. Golden State Warriors, their ball movement speaks for itself. But I'm telling you, man, the Bucks are getting close to that Golden State Warriors level of basketball. They don't have, the star power that Golden State does, but they have better depth than Golden State does this year. Golden State is playing guys off the bench that you have never heard of before. Jacob Evans is coming off their bench. Who the hell is he? Milwaukee's having these guys, these veterans that have been around. Brook Lopez, Ersan Ilyasova, Tony Snell, John Henson's now shooting the three ball in addition to his defense down the paint. Milwaukee's throwing out Dante DiVincenzo, a proven winner in college. That winning culture brings itself to the NBA. Maybe not star power or all these different Well, let me refresh here. Not star power all the time in college. Dante DiVincenzo, though, he knows how to perform in the biggest spots. Last year in college, he had some big games in the tournament, and he was a role player. He was not even the star player on that team. He was a sixth man coming off the bench and providing timely scoring and timely plays. That's stuff that carries with you to the NBA. That's stuff that always will carry. A lot of the times on the court from college is what doesn't carry over immediately, but mindset always carries over, especially being coached by a great team by Jay Wright. I'm telling you, man. Milwaukee is a deep team. Eric Bledsoe can get into Steph Curry's skin. Steph Curry's just one fault about his game is that he has a short temper. If somebody gets under his skin, he will react. He is soft in that sense. Otherwise, Steph Curry on the court, there are a lot of things he can do right. But his attitude, especially when he gets all cocky, that's going to rub people off the wrong way. And Eric Bledsoe's not one guy to mess with. He will get in your skin. He will retaliate, and he'll do whatever he needs. He'll do anything to get in his skin. He'll do anything out there. I'm telling you, Eric Bledsoe, man, is nobody to look past. Is he the same player as Steph Curry on the floor? No, not at all. But, it's those little guys like Patrick Beverley. He got under Steph Curry's skin. Eric Bledsoe can do the same thing. I'm telling you, man, this Milwaukee team is legit. They play near perfect basketball, very crisp, and they don't let the pressure get to them. Down the stretch in Denver, the game was slipping away last week, and because Denver got hot. And being in Denver, the crowd gets fiery, but Milwaukee was able to withstand that, play their basketball, and ultimately close out the game. I just don't think that this was a mirage because Milwaukee did it in Golden State last week. They did it in Denver. It doesn't seem like pressure phases this team.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I hope you're right. I hope it's not Stockholm syndrome after being assigned to a lot of those games. But you made good cases there. I can't dispute that. Again, who will arise to take on the Warriors? And it would be kind of cool again if it was a Milwaukee team, another Midwestern team. Again, maybe it's me, being out here toward the Midwest in that general area. I'm a little further south, obviously, Wisconsin and Minnesota. But at the end of the day, I think everyone's ready. Everyone is ready for a new team to arise. Other than those, fans out in Golden State, for Golden State, they may be spread across the country given their rabid success. But I will say this, Samir. I know. You've been beating the drum hard and been a loyal and faithful Nets fan to the highest degree. But talk to me about your Nets. I honestly, again, moving west here, I haven't been able to catch any New York basketball, but 6-9 right now as it stands, and they're fringe and talking about the playoff discussion right now. I know it's early, and they dodged somewhat of a bullet with your guy Caris LeVert having his injury not be as bad as it could have been. But yeah, talk to me about your Nets. Let me know what's up with them. Let's see what we can derive here from right now. Very much outclassing the Knicks, and that the Knicks are 7 games under 500. The Nets are only 3.
Well, what I'm gonna say is that when I saw Caris LeVert's injury, I was at work, and I tried so hard to maintain my composure. Thank God I didn't cry, but I was visibly upset when I saw that injury. At first, I tried to play it off like, it wasn't that serious. It's only going to be a sprain. And I saw it from a different angle, and I was like, yeah, that looks like it's going to be season ending. So from there, I was just upset, overwhelmed with emotion because he was having a great season so far. But before I get more into Caris LeVert, let me just say, thank God that it was only just a dislocated foot. Thank God that it wasn't as serious as it looked. He caught a major break there. This is a guy that's had foot injuries all throughout his college career. He's had to bounce back from multiple foot injuries, which hurt his draft stock in the 2016 draft. He would have been a lottery pick if he was healthy and playing all those years. But unfortunately, he was hurt, and that led to him slipping in the draft that year. But there's one thing I can take away from Caris LeVert's character is that he is resilient as they come. He is as resilient as they come because he will bounce back from injury. He will put in the work in order to get himself to be the greatest player that he can possibly be. He's a great kid. Seeing it from afar and seeing from what I've read. Great kid, somebody who resilient, somebody who's not going to let these things become, too serious. He's going to view it as a setback for a greater comeback. That's something that I'm viewing as Caris LeVert. He is destined to be a bona fide star in the NBA. Right now, from what I read from Zach Lowe's piece and other pieces around the NBA for Caris LeVert, let's just start off with this. He stayed in Brooklyn the entire summer this year just so that he can work with the Nets staff. Now, a lot of players, nothing wrong with this, nothing at all. A lot of players will jettison themselves and be like, I'm off to Cali for the summer, man. I want to enjoy life, party a little bit, whatnot. Nothing wrong with them. I'll power to them. But Caris LeVert stayed back in Brooklyn just to work with the Nets staff. That, to me, speaks volumes that this guy wants to get better. This guy wants to be great. He doesn't want to just be a role player in the NBA. He doesn't want to be somebody who's an afterthought. He wants to be that killer instinct guy on the court that will make play after play, be a bona fide star in the NBA, and really take this Brooklyn Nets team to the next level. And he wants to be that alpha dog on this Nets team. He wants to be the star, the face of the franchise. This is what he wants to be. Just from that. Just from one of that. But what more? Is that one thing going to tell me that he wants to be the bona fide star in the NBA? Maybe. Maybe not. But when he did leave Brooklyn the last 2 summers, he went to Southern California. Yeah, he did. But was it to party? Not at all. He went to go train with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant. Man, Kevin Durant. Well, stop here for a second and say, how the hell does he know Kevin Durant? Like, how is he on good terms with Kevin Durant? Well, let me tell you something. Kevin Durant loves Caris LeVert. Like, I don't know to what level, but that's what I've been reading. Kevin Durant sees something in this kid. I remember reading in the draft in 2016 that him and Kevin Durant are on good terms. I'm not saying that Kevin Durant's going to come to Brooklyn because of him, but
that's my next question.
But the fact that Caris LeVert is on good terms with this star speaks volumes to just how well liked he is around the league and how much of a bright future this guy has in the NBA just because of his ability to work with stars ahead of him and the work that he's willing to put in the summertime instead of being just in California or somewhere warm, even though New York is warm in the summer, but you get what I'm saying, somewhere more tropical, somewhere you get away from the New York City rush, but he wants to be great, man, and it's showing this year. Caris LeVert, when he's on the floor, the Nets are 11.7 points per game better defensively with him in the lineup. Now, he's not only getting it done offensively, he's getting it done defensively. He's getting up into people's, grill on defense. He's making the right plays defensively, making the right switches, getting timely steals, and just looking like the type of guy that's ready to be a bona fide two-way star in the NBA. I'm not going to say superstar yet. I want to say superstar, but, I'll temper expectations a little bit. But he has the makings of being a two-way, star in the NBA, just from what he's given offensively and defensively. And this year, he's converting 58.3% of his shots between 3 and 10 feet. Is that sustainable? Maybe not. He's 6'7" guard. It'll go down a little bit, but from what I see out there on the floor from him, man, I'm seeing that he has one of the quickest, if not the quickest, first step in the NBA, and he has a great crossover to create himself space, get those floaters in the lane, get those drives, get those layups. He just has a great inside-out game in the NBA, just alone from how he creates space with his dribbling, with his quick step, and all the intangibles that gets him those buckets within 3 to 10 feet in the NBA. He's had a couple of game winners on those floaters alone this year against the Knicks. I think it was the second game of the year. He had a game-winning floater. And then against Denver, against a tougher team in Denver, he had another game-winning floater in the paint. And he just makes it look so easy out there. He just has that confidence, that swagger that every NBA star carries himself with. And this is just only the beginning for him. And it's a shame that it has to come to an end for now. They're saying he could come back to the floor this year, which is a good sign. Expect a little bit of slowness from him. I don't expect him right away to look like the star he's becoming so far this year in the NBA. But I just think this is honestly a minor setback for a greater comeback and a great story in the NBA this year, given that he's had to battle foot injuries before, and just like the first couple of years, he's kind of looked at as an afterthought. Somebody could have been great, but he's not putting it together. The work is starting to pay off for him, and I still think he's a cornerstone for this Brooklyn Nets team. He still got himself a great guy. He's arguably the best selection behind Ben Simmons in the 2016 draft. I'm almost ready to say he's better than Jaylen Brown. I mean, we'll have to wait and see on that front, but Jaylen Brown himself is not having himself a great year this year. So I think the Nets, they rectified their mistake in terms of trading away their 2016 draft pick and picking Caris LeVert. I think they got themselves a great kid, somebody who can be a cornerstone for their team. And, one thing I will have to say about his game that could use improvement if he wants to take that next step is his three-point shooting. Shooting 31% from three, which is not bad by any means. Maybe it's a product that, he doesn't have many other stars on his team. D'Angelo Russell has been, good this year. He's having a good year, but I would like to see a little bit more from him. But I just don't think the floor spacing right there is there for Brooklyn right now. I think a lot of players still like to get their buckets in the paint other than Joe Harris and Allen Crabbe. And, otherwise Rondae Hollis-Jefferson gets a lot of his points in the paint. They don't have a stretch four to space the floor. in Brooklyn right now. Jared Dudley is getting a lot of minutes as the starting power forward, and that to me is a problem. That limits floor spacing, quite significantly. Even though Jared Dudley's a good 3-point shooter, he's not going to be consistent anymore. He's a vet. He's somebody that should be on the bench, get some minutes, but better served as being a mentor to these younger players. As I digress, I think Caris LeVert's 3-point shooting will get better as the team gets better. So overall, the Nets have themselves a great kid who is going to be on his way to a great comeback from just a minor setback.
Well, let's talk about the Nets then without this integral piece. Because as it stands, they're one game out of the last wild card spot. They're a game and a half back of the one in front of that, and they're obviously going to be trying to compensate for LeVert's absence. And I apologize, I said Chris before, I meant to say Caris. But at the end of the day, that's a piece that obviously hurts not to have. I mean, you detailed that well, and I think ultimately for Brooklyn, it's a good test of, obviously they'd like to have more depth than they do, they're obviously going to rotate the pieces in and out to try to supplement the effect of losing. To limit the effect of losing a guy like LeVert. But, again, you talk about the East and who's in charge, and of course Toronto's having a tremendous start. You mentioned Milwaukee, and then it's kind of a close race in the middle there. Boston and Philly aren't having the starts that maybe people expected. Both, hanging in there. They're playoff teams if it started today, but certainly, we know Philly has the discrepancy at 7-0 at home and 2-7 away. Boston has some similar strengths at home and has had struggles on the road. But, you're talking about Detroit, Charlotte, and Orlando, which don't exactly ring out as the most intimidating teams there at the bottom of the East. That, is there a feasible way for Brooklyn to hop them, or, Miami's a half game ahead as well of Brooklyn, and they're not exactly formidable either. Is there a way for Brooklyn to tread water here and find a way to kind of just hang around where they are until LeVert comes back, perhaps? I know it's up in the air. There's no timetable for his return, but at the end of the day, is there an opportunity perhaps for the Nets to be that scrappy team that clings to life, just outside the wild card spot until maybe he comes back and maybe they make a last season push? Is that realistic to Nets fans to hope for?
I think it's realistic, but it's going to have to take a lot of D'Angelo Russell stepping up and really becoming what he was supposed to be coming out of the draft in 2015. D'Angelo Russell's having a good season, but I wouldn't say a great year. I remember off of Nets Daily, I saw a tweet about D'Angelo Russell. I'll pull that up real fast. But in the meantime, I'll start out with replacing Caris LeVert. Caris LeVert, obviously, I already spoke on how great he's been for this team, but it's going to come from Allen Crabbe now. Allen Crabbe's really got to step in and be that, at least 3-and-D guy he was in Portland for much of his career so far. He's going to need to step in, hit his 3-point shot with consistency. He'd have to really show his worth and, really prove that he's the guy that the Nets believed in, handing him that restricted free agent contract a couple years ago, and then bringing him back in via trade to, bring out the best of his ability. It's got to start with him really buying in and doing what he needs to do, just providing that floor spacing from a guard, getting that 3-point shot to go, and just at least being able to step up his game in the absence. I'm not asking him to play like Caris LeVert, right now. It's going to be hard to do. But it's also going to have to come from a little bit of a platoon in a situation with Joe Harris. Joe Harris is going to have to really start hitting more threes with consistency. He has, Joe Harris has proven to be a good 3-point shooter. He's just going to have to do it at a higher level now. He's going to have to really step in, play more minutes. Both him and Crabbe, they're going to have to split a lot of time, play more minutes, get those 3-point shots to go. That's really how they're going to be able to replace the production of Caris LeVert. They can't necessarily replace it, but they can try at the very least to tread water here. As I look for D'Angelo Russell's tweet, there was a little, let's see. Okay, here it is. D'Angelo Russell is averaging 20.4 points, shooting 40.4% from 3-point range, with 5 assists and just 1.2 turnovers in 26.6 minutes per game. And per 36 minutes, he's averaging 27.6 points, 6.8 assists over that span. So this is in Brooklyn's last 5 games. So it seems like D'Angelo Russell is very much trying to find his rhythm here. This was before the Miami Heat game last night, where he didn't have a great game. So I'll just take that as a bad game. But it seems like D'Angelo Russell is starting to find his rhythm here a little bit in Brooklyn. Low turnovers, he'll get his assists, and he's getting his score and go. But my biggest problem with him is that he's not doing it consistently enough. He'll have these big games, and then he'll have these games where he's just going to be sitting down in crunch time. Now, in order for him to really develop into a star, I think Kenny Atkinson needs to start playing him more, Tim. I think Kenny Atkinson is kind of preferring to play his veterans more in these crunch time situations, whereas you need to play your stars in these crunch time situations and let them play through their mistakes so that they can really develop. I think that's one thing where the coaching kind of needs to give in to D'Angelo Russell a little bit more. It's not all on D'Angelo here because he's not. A lot of times this year he hasn't been getting time in crunch time to really play through his mistakes and come up big. Instead, if he makes a couple mistakes, he gets quickly benched. So, I think to replace Caris LeVert though now he's got to step up big time more than ever and really start to find his rhythm. I think a breakout is in store for him. I think it's about time. He's in a contract year. I think the time is now for him to really take that next step.
Again, take credit if he does because he's on my fantasy team. That's just how it works. I'm the mastermind pulling all the strings from here, so I like your chances for the But I don't mean to belabor the negative, but we should talk about your New York Giants, Samir. I didn't anticipate this. I have gone on record many times.
I had them winning the division. That was more biased, though. I'll admit it.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say that just in general, my anticipation was, okay, the Giants take their guy in Saquon back in the draft, and I have said many times that I'd take Sam Darnold, who's having his own troubles, but most rookie quarterbacks.
I stand by that Saquon should have been in a Giants uniform.
Well, it's just it would have been interesting had this been the same case, which it arguably would have been worse if the Giants don't take Saquon and they take Sam Darnold. At this point, Sam Darnold's probably starting over Eli, but then again, his best weaponry is his receiving game with a shoddy offensive line and a lack of running game if they didn't draft somebody else that could have stepped in and done okay at the running back position. So I don't know that there was a short-term right answer because as it stands, I think for the Giants, just from seeing some of the games that they've played here and there, it's one of those things where I think you're just seeing age in the wrong spots. I think Eli Manning, yes, his protection's been shoddy, and that's led to a lot of inconsistency. But there have been a lot of misses from him, and that's something I was hoping wouldn't happen for another couple of years. And I'm not even a Giants fan. So it does, to me, look like Father Time is catching up to Eli. I'm hoping that, for the Giants' sake, that Eli can kind of muster something here. But it's hard when he's getting hit as much as he is. And it's just one of those things where it's a tough road right now for New York. It's just something that it's wearing down in the wrong spots, I think is the best way to put it. And Eli's numbers, again, don't look terrible at face value. They're not going to blow you away either, but he's completing a high percentage of his passes, but he's probably at this point, I don't know how much longer he's going to hold up when he's got 4 games already this season where he's been sacked 4 times or more. To me, that's obviously, for an older quarterback, that's something that is an issue. And while, there's some weaponry on the offensive side for the receiving game, you're not seeing it in the bunches you'd like to see it in. You want efficiency. You want him to be able to balance out the talent he has in OBJ and in Saquon Barkley. And in some games you've seen it, but it's hard. It's hard. And then the defense, which was my worry, hasn't been what they're being paid to be. So at the end of it all, Samir, it's unfortunate that the Giants right now are going through what they're going through. I'm never really rooting against New York unless they're playing my Steelers. But for me, just at this point, I think Giants fans can obviously be upset with the situation they're in, but I think taking solace in the fact, at least for the short term, is that I don't know if there was a pick that they could have made with their high draft pick this year that would have made sense, that would have flipped everything around. Because again, if you put Sam Darnold in the same situation and you remove Saquon Barkley, who's been a big part of the offense, then you're talking about, yes, again, OBJ is there, Evan Ingram, who's been up and down and has been hurt at times this season, is there, and Sterling Shepard and all that, but the offensive line is still the offensive line, and it's been a major issue. So yes, I think the long-term pick I will maintain till the day I die. I will go on record saying it should have been Sam Darnold. But at the end of the day, again, I don't think it would have made much difference for this season. You might have one or two more wins, but you'd still probably have a losing record at this point. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm off base. But at the moment, I think you saw a lot of Giants fans with mixed reviews to that last week's Monday Night Football win because they're already thinking about the draft. And that's unfortunate because that's becoming all too common in all the in all the New York sports markets for football. So, I mean that's been my take. It's just I know I'm probably gonna have to go through it in the relatively near future for Pittsburgh. So it's just one of those tough pills to swallow. And I think if the Giants can pull the right strings, they're gonna have another high draft pick this year. If they hit on that pick, whether it be a quarterback or maybe a stud offensive lineman, maybe they can flip this a little bit moving forward and start building back up again.
I'm going to have to say, Tim, I mean, Sam Darnold's having a good year, even though he's having his struggles, this year in his own rights. I think the Giants still made the right pick in getting Saquon Barkley because Saquon Barkley is a generational running back. This is a guy who has top 5 potential of all time. I mean, I'm not, I'm saying potential. I'm not saying he's going to be, but he has the potential. And you can't pass up on that. You can't pass up on what this guy is bringing with such a crappy offensive line. This guy is still getting his yards. He's still making big plays, down the field with a bad offensive line, to say. If he had a great offensive line, if he had at least a good offensive line, his numbers would be so much better than they are right now. But the fact that he's still putting up these numbers with the offensive line that they have just speaks volumes to how great this kid is going to be, how much of a bona fide star this guy is going to be in his prime later on in his career, and when the Giants will hopefully be winning more football games. He's going to be instrumental in their long-term success, and the Giants, like I said, they will find their quarterback. If they get a top 5 pick this year, Justin Herbert out of Oregon, he's going to be very much available because a lot of teams have a quarterback already that they can build their team around. Or if Oakland decides to trade Derek Carr, the Giants might be in on him as well. I think he's still, he's still got a lot left in him. He's just in a bad situation right now in Oakland where John Gruden thinks he knows everything, and gives off Khalil Mack, who in his own right is a generational defensive end. He is one of the best players in the NFL. You see what he's doing with the Chicago Bears right now. He really revamped that defense and is making Chicago a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Maybe not this year. I mean, this year they could be. But next year, they're just going to be off the charts good. That was a great move by Chicago right there. That's another can of worms, though. But with Oakland being dysfunctional, the Giants aren't any better right now in terms of dysfunction, but at least they don't have a know-it-all coach who's on a 10-year contract just robbing money away from them and really giving their organization a bad look. Maybe they can look to Derek Carr as a young quarterback who can turn the Giants around a little bit. But like you said, Tim, their problem is not the quarterback. Their problem is the offensive line. Their offensive line is horrible. They've already had to make 2 cuts to their offensive line this year. They had to get rid of, this had to have been done a long time ago. They had to get rid of, oh man, I can't even say his name because I'm just so disgusted at him right now.
It's the F word.
Yeah. I'm not even gonna say his name because
Oh.
they had to get rid of Eric Flowers a long time ago
Oh
to
man.
Jacksonville. He is the F word.
Yeah. There's
I couldn't even say his name because I'm so disgusted.
the rage.
To be honest with you, I blanked on his name because I was just so angered right now.
You know who?
I was like, I can't even say. Part of it is I didn't want to say his name. Part of it is like I forgot his name because he's so irrelevant. I forgot his name. All right, I'm number one in New York for no big reason except for Eric Flowers. I thought Eric Flowers was gonna be a great lineman. But
right.
The Giants passed on Todd Gurley. They passed up on Todd Gurley for this garbage. No, that's a little ode to Francesa there. It's Mike Francesa on the fan. No, but they got rid of another offensive lineman. Is his name Patrick Omahe? I don't even know how to say his name.
I believe you're close. I think I'm not positive on the pronunciation either.
Yeah, I thought his name is Patrick. I feel like I'm going to be wrong on this. It is Patrick Omahe. Patrick Omahe. There we go. And his nickname is his middle name is Chubba, so maybe he was fat growing up. Actually, he doesn't look very fat at all. But he's on Jacksonville now too.
Tom Coughlin, man.
He's picking up these former Giants offensive linemen. So there's got to be something right there. Maybe it's an organizational thing that this offensive
Eli
line.
For next year. He wants to. Except Eli's got another year, doesn't he? Or is this his final year?
Well, I think he has a team option, which
okay.
I think it would be declined, but
if he were to hit free agency.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and see there, but basically this team is going to be built around OBJ and Saquon Barkley for the foreseeable future. They'll get their quarterback eventually. I really don't think that's the problem there. It's their offensive line. That's something they need to address. And their defense is not great either. I think they got started in the right direction. I liked Eli Apple this year. And obviously I love Snacks, but I think they needed new homes. I think this defense, much of it also Jack Rabbit's not showing up this year. He hasn't showed up the last 2 years. The only time he really showed up was his first year in New York. I think their defense will still need to be built around Landon Collins, and they're going to need some new defensive ends on linebackers because Alec Ogletree, I thought he was going to find new life in New York. I was wrong. I don't think he's going to be the long-term answer. It's one of the linebackers. I think the Giants their defense and their offensive line just needs new life, but keep OBJ and Saquon here for as long as you can. OBJ may eventually want out, and if he does, sell high on him, but keep him in the fold if you can because he's obviously he hasn't even hit his prime yet, and he's still very good. So that's my take on the Giants.
Well, it's you're not alone in New York, as I said. There's a lot of struggles going on in the New York sports. New York sports, but football especially, which isn't necessarily unheard of in recent years, unfortunately for New Yorkers. But look, I'll say this on Saquon. He is a great talent, and I never doubted that he would be a great impact player. But it's easier to find an impact running back, and I turn to my own beloved Pittsburgh Steelers for the case in point. Now, granted, Pittsburgh has a great offensive line. They have one of the best receivers in the world. They have Ben Roethlisberger, who's still going strong. There's a lot of supporting pieces in place. But the LeVeon Bell saga, one of the biggest fallouts from that, or one of the biggest revelations is James Conner's really good. And also, hey, the rest of the Steelers' offense is really good, which we all knew. But at the end of the day, it's being confirmed, especially that offensive line, with how James Conner's picked up the pace and even outpaced Le'Veon Bell in some statistical categories. And, just to segue here, Samir, I think with the whole Le'Veon Bell saga, and it ties in with Saquon Barkley, is the running back position is a really hard one to play because you can be a great talent and you can be above and beyond, like a Todd Gurley, like a Le'Veon Bell, like a David Johnson when he's not surrounded by no weapons, or an old Fitzgerald. But, at the end of the day, just talking about the running back position, I think we're seeing the divide from the other positions in the league that are starting to see rapid pay escalations. And you're seeing it with running backs, but it's a little more staggered. Todd Gurley kind of stepped up for that group of players, and really helped up the bar salary-wise going into next season. And, Le'Veon Bell is certainly going to help use that to leverage his side of any negotiation. But at the end of the day, what you're seeing is teams are willing to lose running backs a little more than they are other positions. And that was the foundation of this Le'Veon Bell saga, which I'm finally just, I've been wanting to hear the end of it for quite some time as a Steelers fan. But, with what Le'Veon Bell has been, his side of his PR that he's put out there is, I'm standing up for my position at running back, and we need to be paid more. But you're also seeing how easy it is to replace. And that's not to take away from James Conner. It's not to take away from the elite running backs. But I think if you do have pieces in place offensively, and I'm not saying the Giants have all of them, as obviously we've discussed, but it's a tough spot to be in as a running back. And with that as the backdrop, I just want to say my 2 cents here on Le'Veon Bell and leave it at that. I think I understood where he was coming from when he held out, even into the season. My problem with him has always been the fact that he has constantly flip-flopped. And that's not even just, perception as a fan. That's the truth, because we've heard every other week, it seems, before this deadline that just passed for him to play this season, oh, he'll be back, or oh, he's thinking about coming back, or he's expected to be back by this date. And you've heard it from reliable sources around the league, some of the best insiders in the business. You've heard it from Le'Veon Bell's party, who has said his agent has come out and said things from the beginning that did not end up happening, where, oh, he'll be there week 1, pending something exceptional. Well, what exceptional happened? It's more or less Le'Veon Bell has not come in with a set plan, and he's much more going off how he feels on a given day, and that's been antagonized by things from the Steelers side of things, with players coming out and criticizing him for the way he's handled his decision. At the end of the day with that, Le'Veon Bell is going to be a free agent next year. I don't see any way Pittsburgh is going to prolong this process. They have their guy in James Conner. He's a feel-good story. Unless he's hit with a devastating injury, knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't happen. There's no reason for them to entertain the idea of extending any longer this saga of Le'Veon Bell. He'll hit the market, he'll get paid, and he'll get paid richly, and he deserves to on a talent basis. But I think with it all boiling down the way it did, a lot of this could have been avoided if he had just come out and said from the beginning, "Hey, if you don't get me a long-term deal that I agreed to, I'm going to hold out for the season if need be." You can't wrap it like he wrapped it. He rapped about retiring instead of playing on the franchise tag again. And until that comes to pass, I don't believe that's going to happen. But then he came back and said, yeah, I'll be there through his agent. And very clearly he's changed his mind and not been organized with this. So I don't really critique the Steelers. They stuck to their guns. Could they have offered a little more guaranteed money? Sure. But that's not how they roll with the running back position. They've been consistent with that. So at the end of the day, I think everyone's a little tired of hearing about Le'Veon Bell and jet skis in Miami and crappy rap music. I wish him the best when he hits the market. I'm certainly not going to be rooting too hard for him when he gets to his new team handsomely paid. I think he deserves to be that well paid, but I'm certainly not going to miss him in Pittsburgh with how well James Conner has done and what a great story he is. So, I won't hold really too much ill will towards Bell. As a Steelers fan, there's a part of me that will be a little happy to see whatever team he joins get beaten by the Steelers if it happens that way. But other than that, I don't wish him any ill will. I hate when I see fans go out and say, "Oh, I hope he tears both ACLs." I think that's just an awful thing to say and an awful thing to wish when this is how this guy makes his money. The one thing I'll say for Le'Veon Bell is he put his money where his mouth was. Even if he changed his mind a billion times, he gave up $14.5 million to prove his point. So you can't take away from the fact that he felt strongly enough at some point to say, you know what, I'm not going to play this year. I'm going to bet the house on myself. And while it wasn't done the way he should have probably done it, and how much he seems to have flip-flopped, it's a hard decision. I get it, but I will say he bet on himself, and we'll see what the results are. But I will never wish injury on any player. That's just not how I roll. And I'm not saying that, as trying to make myself look good. I just mean it's just, people have to realize this is a profession for the players and a game for the rest of us. So I'm not hoping that someone gets hurt. But at the end of the day, I'm happy that this is moving to the rear view. I'm worried he might go to Baltimore. Baltimore, if they cut Joe Flacco, might have some spending money. Then I might be a little upset. But other than that, I think the Jets might be the team he ends up with. They have a ton of money to spend next year. They're probably going to clean house. They need to get better offensively, obviously, but you can dangle the money that he wants and a young quarterback who has a lot of potential. And the New York market, I think he could probably make that into a very strong offer. Either that or maybe a Florida team where there's no income tax. If money's his top priority, maybe he might be going down south to go play for a team like the Buccaneers, who are really nowhere right now. But either there, maybe Chicago, because he's from, he's an Ohio guy. He's born in Ohio. I don't think he's going to Cleveland, obviously, with some of the young running backs they have. But he does also love LeBron, so maybe he would. There's no real spot for him in LA, but he likes following. He loves LeBron on Twitter and stuff, and maybe he'd go somewhere. Maybe if Cleveland made some dumb move, which they're prone to doing, maybe he'd consider it. I don't know. That's near where he grew up, so. At the end of it all, again, I would say maybe New York. The Jets certainly make sense. You could maybe see the Texans as well. They have some money to spend, as I understand it. I don't know how, though, because they have a lot of high-priced guys on that team. Or even Chicago. Chicago, not Chicago. I apologize. They have a good running back core there. But at the end of the day, yeah, a couple options for him. Obviously, right off the bat, the Colts might be a player as well, I've heard. But at the end of the day, wherever he goes, he'll get paid. I think that much will hold up. And I don't know about you, Samir. I don't know if you took Le'Veon Bell in any fantasy leagues.
Nope.
I did.
I
finally got the number one pick for the first time in my life in the league I've had, the very first fantasy league I ever did. Took Le'Veon Bell. But, and this will be hanging on my tombstone, I drafted James Conner in every league. Including the one I took Bell in. So what an insurance policy he's been, and I'm very proud of my GMing skills once again as we flip over to football from the basketball world. I just can't stop bragging about it. So
you're so full of it when it comes to fantasy leagues. Let me tell you.
Hey, it's make believe. So of course I'm doing well.
No. Nah, but I mean, basically what you said about Le'Veon Bell, you hit it spot on. I agree with you. Don't ever wish injury on a player. I think that's childish. Big Yankee fan, die hard, but there are a lot of Yankee fans that, wish injury on Red Sox players, and I just think that's classless. I think, they're guys that are out there making a living for themselves. You can wish injury on I'm not wish injury on, but, you can lash out your anger on a certain player if, they just don't. They perform bush league stuff like, just a player that intentionally injures somebody. I don't have any examples on the top of my head. There, you can.
Vontez perfect.
I'm sorry.
Vontez perfect.
Yes.
I don't necessarily wish injury on him, but it certainly doesn't pain me when he's not on the field.
Yeah, there are certain players where you're just like, okay, I need to get the hell off the field. They deserve to be suspended forever, expelled. There's certain players like that, but don't ever wish an injury on, somebody that's just getting paid to go to a team. Like I remember somebody, when Darren Williams got traded to the Nets, some Knicks fan says, I hope Darren Williams tears 2 ACLs. I'm like, all right, chill. Like you can be a Knicks fan, root for Melo. At that time, they got Melo. Root for all that. That's fine. But don't ever wish injury on a player just because he went to your opposing team. I was pumped about Darren Williams, and That just pissed me off right there because, you know, don't wish injury on a player. He had his own injury problems in Brooklyn, New Jersey. I really wish that didn't happen to him. That was a fall from grace that I never ever want to see from anybody. You know, that was once considered one of the best, if not the best point guard in the NBA. I never wish that on anybody. So I agree with you right there. Don't ever wish an injury on a player. But, you know, with Tim, I agree with you basically on everything you said. I don't fault Le'Veon Bell one iota for holding out and getting what he felt like he deserves. Sure, he's missing out on 14.5 million this year. I think that's, you know, not the smartest move, but we'll see how that plays into free agency this upcoming year. At least he didn't play a game this year and not get paid for it. So that's on him, I guess, in a way that he's missing out on 14.5 million this year. We'll see how it plays in, but I do not blame him whatsoever for holding out for what he deserves. He is a running back. He takes a lot of wear and tear on his body, you know. So this is not something to mess with in my mind. He needs to hold out for what comes at him, you know, what he feels like he deserves from a different team. Somebody will eventually pay him, you know, and he maybe, like you say, he gets what he feels like he deserves from the Jets this coming off season. He worked hard and tirelessly to be put in a situation to get paid. So I do not blame him one bit if he's looking for what he gets, because in the NFL, one injury can end your career. You know, so you need to get as much money as you possibly can for a career path that's not necessarily a long-term thing, you know, in life. You know, you need to get
NFL, not for long. That's what it stands for. It's just, and like I said, running back position especially, it's been a drawn-out battle to get Todd Gurley money. You know, to get David Johnson money, and Bell will probably set the new standard. That's what he wants to do. And Pittsburgh gave him offers. I mean, they gave him big offers. The guaranteed money was lower.
You can't say that. You know, that's why I don't fault Pittsburgh here either. But I don't fault Le'Veon Bell for trying to get what's his.
I think the smartest guy on the Pittsburgh Steelers might be their offensive lineman, David DeCastro. He went to Stanford, did very well there. He takes everything very seriously, but it is one of their best players. And he said this week, he goes, you kind of see both sides, and you know, you wish that it could have come to a resolution, but you know, you see the team side, you see the player side, and you know, I hope he moves on, and I hope he gets paid his money, you know, and that, just leave it at that. I mean, I think everyone's tired of talking about it. They're making a big deal over the fact that his teammates took all the stuff from his locker while the media was in there once the deadline came and went, but the players in that video came out and said, we took it as a joke, and we mailed it all to him anyway. I mean, I think there's some in that locker room who are genuinely pissed off that Le'Veon Bell isn't a part of this, and they'd probably be more of them if James Conner hadn't stepped in and has done the job that he's done for the Steelers team. And it would have been a very interesting situation had Bell reported back, and maybe that was part of the decision on his part to stay away. You know, and that it would have created a bit of a controversy in the backfield because you have this superstar talent, Le'Veon Bell, coming back. Who knows what kind of game shape he's in. And then you have James Conner, who appears to be an up-and-coming superstar, just with how productive he's been. And they're both well-rounded running backs, so you have a good problem in that you have to rotate them. And they each do things really well, but you know, Bell's a bit better as a receiver, and Connor's probably a bit more explosive a runner than Bell is. So there's kind of different ways they could have implemented that. Maybe they do what the New Orleans Saints do with Alvin Kamara and Melvin Ingram. But at the end of the day, they don't have that problem to worry about. Again, probably a good problem to have, but you never know. I mean, you know, you see it like we're talking about with the Minnesota Timberwolves when they had Jimmy Butler. Kind of not enough bones to go around to feed all the dogs on, you know, hunting for the, like I said, that earlier point, you got to be a dog hunting for the bone, a dog on the hunt, you know, and sometimes there's not enough food to go around.
Absolutely.
So, I think that, you know, I think that'll put that to bed. I think we'll hear more about Bell come March when free agency fires up again, and I would imagine there's a bit of a bidding war for him. And again, I would expect the New York Jets to be right near the top of that list in terms of teams favored to land him just because of all the money they're going to have to spend. Again, they can dangle. They could probably go out and get an offense. I don't know who offensive linemen are hitting free agency this year, but they could probably go out and sign one of them or two and LeVeon Bell, and then also dangle the idea of, hey, we have a young quarterback who very well could break out into being one of the better young quarterbacks in all football. So we'll see. But then that leads me to my last point, talking about the Jets, Samir. This is the question of the day. Which New York football team drafts highest? Because right now there's legitimate arguments for all three of them. And I think we all saw it coming with Buffalo. And I love my Buffalo fans. I'm with them in hockey, so I relate to them. And the optimism was not overflowing from that fan base as far as the Bills went, but there was some, and I didn't share it at all. I had said from the get-go that Josh Allen, to me, from everything that I read and everything that I saw about him, was that he's an extremely raw quarterback, and that if he had to start this year, he would not be ready. And then he was drafted on to probably the worst offense in football, with just no weapons around him that are really anything more than mediocre. You have an old Sean McCoy who can't stay healthy, and then nothing else. Everybody else on that offense is completely fallen by the wayside, and it's just there's no situation where a quarterback's going to look good there unless they're Tom Brady, and even Tom Brady probably have some issues trying to get that offense going. So, at the end of the day, you have that in Buffalo. You have the Jets getting shellacked by Buffalo, and basically the team just gave up last week, and it's a situation where you're probably with a lame duck coach for the rest of the season, and more than likely a lame duck GM. Not that the GM can do much at this point in the year after the trade deadline, and in football that's overrated anyway. So you're kind of sitting in just kind of in limbo there. And then, of course, we just detailed the Giants' issues. So all three teams are probably picking in the top 10. I'd be shocked if any of them aren't, assuming they all have their draft picks. And I believe the Jets still have theirs, right? I don't think they gave that up.
No, I don't think so either.
No, so the Bills had multiple firsts, I believe, and I think they still have theirs. They traded around a little bit to trade up to get Josh Allen. I can't remember. I believe they still have the at least one first rounder this year. I think they had two going in, and they may have given up. I can't remember. I could be totally off there. But at the end of the day, which team is coming in highest, Shamir? What do you think?
I mean, I would like to say the Giants if they don't make the playoffs, but honestly, I think it's going to be Buffalo. I think the Giants are going to get a little bit of a roll here, and I just don't see Buffalo, sustaining much success down the stretch. They had that big win against the Jets. I mean, maybe they get something going here, but honestly, I would like to say the Giants, but I have a feeling it's going to be the Bills.
I'm kind of with you. The Bills have a scrappy defense. They're a team that is just listless on offense, and that is really hard for even a good defense to contend with because of the fact that they're on the field too much. And the Bills do have a first-round pick, so I just wanted to confirm that. If the draft were tomorrow, it would be Oakland in first, Arizona and San Francisco to round out the top three. The Jets would pick fourth, the Giants would pick fifth, and the Bills would pick ninth. There's a pretty heavy logjam in the top 10 right now with a bunch of teams with 3 wins or less. So, I think at the end of the day, I think I'm with you. And, again, I think the Bills and the Jets and the Giants both have weapons on offense that can win them some games. If the Giants run into a team without a fierce pass rush, then, they could probably have their way with a lesser team. The Jets occasionally can get it going with Darnold. They have some issues with lack of weaponry as well, but not to the extent that the Bills have. And even a few decent pieces on defense themselves. And while they're both projected to pick higher than the Bills right now, Buffalo is just, I don't know. I mean, they're again, scrappy is all the best thing I can say about them. But when Matt Barkley is your quarterback right now, granted he got his revenge against the Jets, I don't see it. I don't see an optimistic. I'm trying to look at their remaining schedule here. They have Jacksonville, who's struggling, the Dolphins, who are middling, the Jets, the Lions, the Patriots, the Bills. I'm sorry, to close out against the Dolphins again. So not the hardest of schedules, but even so, this is a Bills team that had a tough first half of their schedule. Maybe this win against the Jets gets them rolling, but I don't see it. Who's gonna? Josh Allen might be back, but to me, it's a so what. He doesn't have much around him. Zay Jones might be his best weapon in his second year, and that says a lot right there. And that's not to really slight Zay Jones, but he's certainly not a world breaker. The best thing I can say is the Bills' defense has played a gritty effort despite everything else that's happened. So I'm still kind of with you there. I think it might be the Bills sitting at the top, near the top of the draft. I don't think anyone's catching Oakland. And then, San Francisco and Arizona are both pretty bad as well. So I think that's pretty firm top three. But you might see Buffalo 5th. You might see the Jets and Giants 6th and 7th when it's all said and done. And I think that's probably what we're talking about. Again, the draft will be a fun season for New York fans. Not really what they want to see, I think, after all these years. But at least the Giants can rest back on some of those old Super Bowls in the last decade, so and change. So at the end of the day, I think we're going to get a long talk about draft stuff throughout the offseason, which for me is fine because I like the draft, but New Yorkers are probably, like I said, sick and tired of it.
Yeah, you pretty much hit it spot on there with the NFL draft.
Well, do you know what else New Yorkers are sick and tired of, Samir? And it only took a couple of days to be sick and tired of it. Is the MLB awards?
God.
Now, let's be fair. The Mets fans are pleased because Jake DeGrom, rightfully so, got the Cy Young. I was all for that. The dude was just unreal this season. You remember our debate over if the Yankees should consider trading their top two prospects to get, not prospects, their top two young pieces.
I don't think that was ever going to happen, though. I really don't think that was ever going to happen.
I know, and it was more or less just to float the hypothetical, just to say, what if, not ever considering it as a likelihood. But DeGrom gets his, and rightfully so. I think
he deserves it.
He's a guy who deserved the Cy Young this year with how well he pitched. But yeah, I think you and I both have beef with the voters for the AL Rookie of the Year.
There's so much hate to go around for the Yankees. He played for the Yankees, so he doesn't deserve that award. We'll give it to Shohei Ohtani. He's a pitcher and a hitter. He made 10 starts. That's good enough. He missed most of the year this year. Well, maybe not most, but he missed a good portion of the year this year. But he still deserves it because he made 9 starts, 10 starts. He had a 3-point-something ERA, and he contributed for a non-factor team like the Angels. He has a higher WAR, sure, but the Angels are not a good team, and the Yankees right here are a 100-win team. Miguel Andujar, had timely base hits, doubled. Has good pop in his bat, some home runs, some RBI, we'll pass him for a guy that contributed for a non-factor team, guy that made starts and didn't even perform all that well.
I think what it is Ohtani is, don't get me wrong, Ohtani's a great talent, but
he is, but he did not contribute for a team like the Yankees.
Right, well, and I think it's more in recognition of the fact that he's a two-way player and how rare that is. But it's like he's not going to be a two-way player for a long time because, the whole issue with his elbow. They had to shut him down pitching-wise and let him keep playing through what was essentially, to my understanding, an elbow that needed Tommy John. And correct me if I'm wrong, I still think he's going to try to get that this offseason unless that's changed. I could be very wrong there. I thought the last report was that he is going to get it, but he was going to bat through the remainder of the season because he still wanted to contribute, and maybe he's electing to avoid it like Tanaka did. I don't know. I can't remember what the severity of his injury was called, but I remember they were saying it was very much recommended that he go and get the surgery, and I think people are still just fixated on that. Yeah, he can pitch and he can hit, which is phenomenal, but again, Michael Kay, I like him a lot as a broadcaster. And I think he is, as far as broadcasters go. Yes, he's the Yankees broadcaster, but he's a guy who can remain fairly objective. From what I've seen from his show, the clips I've seen, and he was out in arms saying, "Hey, this guy Ohtani is a great talent, but he did not play enough. He did not play enough to warrant that award." And yes, he kept DHing, but how many times do you see DHs get snubbed from awards because they're DHs, and in the NL it doesn't even exist. So I don't know. I just felt that was the wrong choice, because now if Ohtani had played all year and maintained those solid numbers on both sides, I wouldn't have had much of an issue with it. But similar to what Michael Kay said, he said he doesn't even have that huge a problem with Ohtani winning. He disagrees with it, but to win as lopsided as he did is startling, because Miggy Andujar was a machine, just an offensive machine. And yes, he's not a great defender right now. He's learning, and he probably will never be.
But when you ever award a Rookie of the Year based on defense?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it's always goes, for a hitter anyway, to the numbers, and he was absolutely dominant. And a lot of the time, a good chunk of that season, he spent near the bottom of the lineup. It wasn't like he was always batting in front of Aaron Judge. It wasn't always,
He produced timely base hits from the bottom of the lineup. And Torres at the beginning of the year.
Yep, and he had a bad slump in the very first, 3 weeks, and then just exploded. And the guy is and yeah, he got to the middle of the lineup here and there, but for the most part, he wasn't really handed the protection of, okay, Aaron Judge is hitting behind you, so teams have to throw to you. A lot of the time, he was giving that support from the bottom third of the lineup, because that's how deep the Yankees lineup was. And I feel like the voters got this one wrong. And I understand you're going to knock a guy because his defense isn't great, and you're saying he's just a pure hitter. But then you turn around and give Ohtani, who's a DH when it comes to offense and doesn't play every day, the award. And yeah, I know he can pitch, but again, that's pretty much taking a back seat for a while, because of the fact that again, his elbow has some issues. To me, they got it wrong. They got it wrong, and I don't think that.
I think there was some anti-Yankee bias in this voting.
And that's even Michael Kay. It was like, I've never really been a subscriber to that, but this does make me scratch my head, because, okay, again, if you really, really felt that strongly about Ohtani, yeah, sure, but it shouldn't have been 25-5 in the discrepancy of votes between the two. That to me is ridiculous. And I understand why Gleyber didn't win, because he missed time with injury, which is why I thought Ohtani was not a realistic candidate to win it all. I think he'd be near the top in voting, but I thought this was Miggy Andujar's award, and I think, what this offseason is bringing to the Yankees is a lot of ammunition. Call it the Red Sox and their, earned parade and their earned celebration of well-deserved title and their talent, but certainly not, and this is the typical Boston, what they love, and not being graceful winners and coming out and saying some of the things they've said in the media and to the public because they're fired up about winning and playing the New York over and over again. I get it. It's it's a return to the rivalry, which is good for baseball, and it's good for Yankees Red Sox. It makes it that much more interesting when it was already really interesting. But I think the Yankees, between Andujar getting snubbed and between this excessive taunting from the Red Sox. Again, I'm not necessarily complaining for the baseball side of things, but it certainly fires me up as a Yankees fan to have this kind of added on. I think the Yankees should go in pissed off next year. I think they should come out swinging. They're not going to say it publicly. They're going to say the right things and say the right things to the media. But at the end of the day, I want to see them come in and remember what's been said about them, what's been levied against them or disregarded about them in terms of what the awards should be and what they became, and I would say disrespect Miggy Andujar is handed in 20 more votes to the next guy ahead of him. When if you're going to give it to Ohtani, it should have been much closer. I think that should be legitimate ammunition coming in, and I know not every player is wired like that, but a lot of them are, where they play with a chip off their shoulder, and I think that's always been it's ironic. That's always been a Boston thing for their sports teams, especially football, especially baseball. They always play with a chip off their shoulder. I hope that's what the Yankees take from it. I hope they take losing to Boston in the playoffs, and I hope they take Alex Cora, who is a generally very great guy, and I'm not saying he's a bad guy or anything. I'm just saying very reserved guy, and in terms of handling the media, and maybe he had a few beers. I'm not trying to say that's wrong, but coming out and saying "go suck it" and during a victory parade. As a fan, if I wasn't a Yankees fan, I'd probably think it was funny. As a Yankees fan, I think it's.
I think it's just. I just think that the Red Sox keep the Yankees in their mind way too much. After winning the World Series, they start playing New York, and then they say at the championship parade, "Go suck it." I just think that it proves that the Yankees are the bigger brother, that the Red Sox are the little brother.
Hey,
you can't deny that.
If we're talking recent history, it's the Red Sox. I begrudgingly admit that because they're the ones winning. But yeah, it says a lot that they continue to kind of gloat here, and they earn the right to do so. But it's just
But why keep
I
the
would
Yankees
be keeping
in your
a tally.
mind?
If I'm the Yankees, I would not be forgetting. I'd say, you know what, this goes in the memory bank. When we come back next year and we play Boston, you don't have to go out and throw pitches at anybody or anything like that. You just go out there and you play with that edge to beat them. Plain and simple. And, obviously the Yankees have a busy offseason ahead of them to try to upgrade some of their deficiencies, and there aren't too many, but there are some in important areas, and they're going to look at that. But when I'd come back next year, I'd say, hey, we got to take every game, and they have a good approach as it is, but I want to see the edge there. I want to see the fire from the Yankees. They have a lot of chemistry in that clubhouse. I think they respect Aaron Boone. I know people jump on the manager anytime anything goes wrong, and he's a rookie manager that won over 100 games, so I'm not at all upset with Aaron Boone. I want to see an edge. I mean, the Yankees are always this team that is very, since basically the 80s on, they've been very measured. That's kind of the Yankees thing.
They need to start playing like the bigger brother in this situation. They got, the little brother. They got to play like they're the underdogs. So they can't just always be like, we got 27 world championships and you got 9. I think that argument is becoming faded because the Red Sox have won 4 championships since 2004. It's time that the Yankees step up. They've done a great job building their farm system organically and bringing players to the next level. But now it's time for them to make those bigger moves, upgrade your starting rotation. Don't just rely on your offense to carry you into games. You need starting pitching. You can't always rely on your bullpen because they can flame out just as quickly as they can light up a game. Bullpen is very hit or miss. You need starting pitching. You need a couple of aces that can bring you deep into games in the playoffs and the regular season that can give your bullpen, the necessary rest so that they can be fiery during the big spots of the postseason, come in and get important outs. That's what the Yankees need. They need to upgrade now. They need to stop, being all glories in their 27 world championships and set the standard that their offense is always going to carry them. You need starting pitching here.
And I think to be fair, I think the team is pretty well composed. The guys that are about the present, but they're also, they're fiery guys in there. You can look at a guy like Giancarlo Stanton or a guy like Gary Sanchez or Luis Severino. Those guys are fiery guys. They get into it. They're animated in their way they display their emotion, and I think they have a good balance. I think the clubhouse is right, but I think you're right in that, the biggest thing this offseason is getting starting pitching. And, I know obviously there's a lot of talk about the big budget free agents, Manny Machado and Bryce Harper, and that's all fine and well, but I think it's better. You're better suited. I don't want, you can nickel and dime and you can, not go $40 million a year. I understand that completely. If that's what you're trying to avoid. This isn't the Yankees of yesteryear when George Steinbrenner would have signed both Manny Machado and Bryce Harper by now and traded a bunch of the young guys to make room, and not even to make room, just to go get another ace. But to me, I think the biggest thing, and you mentioned it, is the Yankees have to go and they have to get a top 3 pitcher or 2. I don't know that they have one in Severino. I think what he, between tipping pitches or just wearing down in the second half of the year, I think his flaws are correctable. I mean, we saw such a dominant stretch from him in the first half of last season. I think he's very capable of getting back to that with how young he is. And I think Masahiro Tanaka, yeah, he has his stretches in the regular season, but the guy is just, when the big moment is needed, he tends to deliver. You bring back CC, which is,
You need the
quality
guy.
veteran pitcher, but I don't
Yeah.
want to see him in my top three. I mean, I don't want to see him as my third pitcher every year. And I give him all the credit in the world for all the effort he's put in and the fact that he's remained relevant. He's kind of the Yankees, even though they had Bartolo Colon, but he's
He's
starting
like the
to turn
Yankees
into that.
version of Bartolo Colon, or
Yeah.
he's kind of turned into the MLB version of Vince Carter here. He's
That,
somebody
yeah,
who
and
had
that,
his struggles later on in his career, but
yeah.
reinvented a few
But
things.
even
and-
CeCe's been
yeah.
solid. Like he goes through stretches too, just like most pitchers. But he's produced decently. I mean, that's the thing, is he's not even completely washed up. He still has some stuff left. He's reinvented himself.
Exactly.
But I want to see him as a fifth pitcher. And I might be spoiled in saying that, but an older guy like that shouldn't be in your top three. It should be, okay, yeah, you want to go get a guy who's in his early 30s, like a Corey Kluber, then yeah, go get him.
I think Corbin's more
that-
realistic though here.
Yeah, it's well, you're kind of banking on what they've been saying about Cleveland, is that, again, why would Cleveland, an AL competitor to the Yankees, trade away one of their best pitchers to the Yankees when they're very likely going to meet them at some point in the postseason, or at least in the race to the postseason. But again, financial issues seem to be playing a role in Cleveland's decision making. You'd think they'd look elsewhere to make a move, but the Yankees, maybe they give Justice Sheffield back to the Cleveland Indians. That'd be ironic, and then that'd be funny if they did that and then they went out and signed Andrew Miller, and then you basically undo the trade. I mean, there's other pieces.
I mean, we got Clint Frazier
Frazier.
still, but
Clint Frazier was a big part of that as well, but he could be shipped out maybe for pitching as well. I mean, I like Clint Frazier a lot, don't get me wrong. I just think he's probably one of the first that gets talked about, but then there's also the question of his value given his concussion issues right now. So,
I don't like
I don't know where that
Kluber,
goes,
though.
but
I don't like Corey Kluber as an option for the Yankees because he hasn't performed in the postseason the last couple of years. He had a lights out 2016, but then in 2017 and this year, he just looked like a shell of himself in the
his
postseason.
numbers are still pretty good. I mean, he'd be an upgrade, but it doesn't have to be him. I mean, there's free agents they're looking at.
But
Patrick
the Yankees
Corbin's
lit him
name
up
gets
in
tossed around.
2017. The Yankees
Yeah, they
absolutely lit
did.
him
I
up.
remember that well, too. I remember that well from going into that match. I'm thinking, oh, God, Corey Kluber. And then the
Yeah.
Yankees shelled him. So I was like, oh, okay.
And then
That was
2018
just-
against Houston, he just didn't look like a pitcher that belonged in the big spot in the postseason. I mean, 2016 he did very well, give him all the credit, but so did Cleveland. They had something magical that year. So I'm not sold on Corey Kluber being the answer in the Yankees rotation. If we got him, sure, we'll see what happens. But
my question then becomes, is there an option in free agency? I know Dallas Keuchel's name has been tossed
Patrick
around.
Corbin,
And
Syracuse
Patrick
kid.
Corbin's name has been tossed around
Syracuse
as well.
kid, grew up a Yankee fan.
And Corbin, I always think, is older than he is. He's 29, which would make some sense. And the biggest thing for me is that he's a lefty. The Yankees are, can't bank on CC to be their go-to lefty, in my opinion. Again, I like him a lot. I love what he brings to the clubhouse, and that's why he's back. That's why Brett Gardner's back, because of what they bring as leaders. And they do have their value. They have their value in what they can bring as well. But, I think, Patrick Corbin's from right down the street from Oswego. I mean, he grew up right between Oswego and Syracuse in Clay, New York. So
yeah.
I've been there. I've been to Clay a couple of times.
We have. We used to hit up the Chili's and Chipotle.
Yes, we
there.
have. There's a Chipotle there. There's a Chili's there.
Oh, man.
John Krell and I are a good buddy. I accidentally went to the Clay Mall one time and did a little trip around there. So, I'm sure he'd come back to. I think that's the logical move. If you go out and you make a big free agent signing, I'd prefer it to be Patrick Corbin. He's a guy who's been around. He's a vet. And he probably coming over to the Yankees would be a good move for him. Now, you can debate, some of his career seasons have been a little iffy. 2016, 2017, over 4 in both seasons, just over 4 in 2017, over 5 in 2016. Granted, I think the sample size was a little small. Well, 155 innings, that's a pretty big stretch to have an over 5 ERA in. But other seasons, to back up his solidness, in 32 starts in 2013, he had 3.41 ERA. In 2015, he had 85 innings. So I think that was, I believe, injuries that year, and a 3.60 ERA. So, there's a little bit of risk coming with that. You'd hope that, in a contending team that he would, buckle down and be that player he was last season, in which he was so dominant. And it's, again, that whole thing goes back to, okay, you're also going to Yankee Stadium, and correct me if I'm wrong, is Arizona's place, is their park hitter friendly? I can't remember.
Their park is hitter friendly.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not exactly a total shock to his system, but it is Yankee Stadium,
I think he'll be fine though in Yankee Stadium. I think he just has the composure and the makeup to be a New York Yankee. I mean, can't pretend to know everything about Patrick Corbin, but the starts I've seen him, he does look composed, and he does look like somebody who can, pitch.
I'd be curious to see what his value is, because he's coming off a year where he does look like an ace. J-Hap is hitting free agency, and I would imagine the Yankees are going to let him test the waters. Not that he was bad. He did okay for the Yankees. He was decent deadline ad.
They got him specifically for the Boston series, and he didn't even deliver, so that's going to hurt his chances.
Right, and that he's not going to be at the top of their list. I mean, I would be curious to see what other options there are. I mean, it isn't the most star-studded. Dallas Keuchel's out there. He's a ground ball pitcher. He's a righty. Oh, I'm sorry, he's a lefty. I always get him confused with other pitchers in Houston. I mean, Keuchel, I don't know. Would he shave his beard?
No.
I don't know.
I would say there's little to no chance he ends up as a Yankee.
He was at good portion of his career a Yankee killer. I mean, he had some good games against them, some good stretches against them. If he's willing to shave the beard, man, I wouldn't be opposed. I mean, I know he's done damage to the Yankees.
I wouldn't be opposed, but I just don't see it happen.
He's a 32-year-old lefty, so there's a little risk there. He's coming off one of his heavier workloads of his career, 204 innings last year with Houston. Wasn't dominant, but was okay. He was solid, 3.74 ERA. His whip wasn't terrible, 1.31. For his standards, it's a little high, but he is a ground ball pitcher. And in Yankee Stadium, that would be beneficial if he were to come here. Again, I don't know if that's something he's willing to do. He seems to be more the type that would fit in just fine in Houston or in Boston or one of those teams that lets you be you. And not that the Yankees don't, but there's the facial hair. I mean, some guys that means a lot. He might be a guy that means a lot to. I don't know, but he's been a career Astro, and it'd be very curious to see. If he would come up north and the Oklahoma boy coming up to the Yankees, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'd be for it. I'd definitely be for it. He's experienced in the AL. He's an experienced postseason pitcher. He's a lefty again. I can't stress that enough. Unless you're really confident in Justice Sheffield, and I know they like him. I don't know that you have a lefty right now that I'm thrilled about with the big club. So. I would be perfectly fine giving Dallas Keuchel and Patrick Corbin a look.
I would give Patrick Corbin a look because he's younger and just like he's a New York kid. So I'd rather give him.
I love going back for Nasty Nate and keeping him out of Boston, but again,
he's
flash
in
the
Boston.
pan? Is it that second half? But he was such a big vital role for them in the postseason. Granted, he gave up that dinger in that marathon of an 18-inning game, but not
he
really
was a warrior that
fault.
game.
He pitched his heart out.
You can't fault him for that.
Yeah, no, not at all. I'd love to have him back. I mean, you'll remember I was campaigning hard for him at the trade deadline.
Me too.
To bring him back. I'm a big fan of his.
Me too.
I hated the fact that he gave the Sox such a boost. I mean, he was so effective for them, and to see that was it hurt a little bit. So he probably goes back to Boston if you ask me. I mean, I don't know what their situation is up there as far as what they're willing to spend on him, but would not shock me at all if he stays there, and that would kill me. But as far as Machado and Harper, I don't know, Samir. You already heard Hal Steinbrenner come out and voice some concern with Machado, which is kind of unprecedented as far as I can remember, at least with the Yankees, in pursuit of free agents, coming out and kind of poo-pooing a guy before they even talk to him. So I don't know that Manny Machado is the guy to go to. He kind of, did himself some damage with some of the things he pulled in the postseason, and it brought up memories of the past where he's done some immature and angry things. And he's a fiery, competitive guy, but he's even mentioned New York as a possibility since last season. Talking about probably both me and Bryce Harper will end up in New York Yankees. But I don't know. I mean, he's a talent for sure. He's a tremendous hitter. He can be a great fielder. He went through a bit of a rocky stretch. Now there's a spot for him at shortstop while Didi's recovering. I don't know if that's where they'd put him, but I would imagine that's where he'd want to go. He'd certainly be a massive boost to the lineup, of course, and a great player, but you do have to wonder, he doesn't always dig out for ground balls, and, the Yankees aren't exactly, that's not anything new per se. I mean, Gary Sanchez has had to be talked to about that. Robinson Cano, I remember, would dog it a few times where he just wouldn't dig down the line. That always pisses me off because I grew up a huge Derek Jeter fan, and he always would dig it down to first base. But no, I don't know. I think between him and Harper, they talked to him already. They've asked the Nationals about the idea of whether Harper's position flexible, and he's come out and said, yeah, I'd consider playing first base. And that to me would be the best, really the only situation I'd be thrilled to get Harper, because if you're going to put him at first, you're not messing up the outfield rotation, which is already pretty crowded. I want Aaron Judge in right. He's a plus defender. He's got a phenomenal arm. He's a solid mover, especially in Yankee Stadium, given it's a shorter field. It's great to have Andrew McCutchen for this brief stint you had him in, but I don't believe he's back. You already have Hicks and Gardy. Maybe I wouldn't be shocked if they go in pursuit of an ace. Maybe they trade Aaron Hicks because he's got several years of arbitration control left. He's got to be attractive to some teams. He's a great defensive player. He's developed as a hitter with the Yankees. He's a good player. I would hate to lose him, but if you're getting an ace for him and maybe Clint Frazier and Justice Sheffield, and you go get a legitimate ace, I don't know where that trade exists.
I don't see Hicks moving, though. He is 29 years of age, so I don't
think 29, but they have, I think, at least 2 more years of arbitration control on him, which would make him attractive.
He'd be attractive to a contender, but you're not going to get an ace for him.
Right, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'd be...
Because he's on the older side. He would only be attractive to a contending team that's looking to add. He's not going to be attractive to a team that's looking to rebuild.
Very fair, unless the team is misguided. Unless they're maybe you go call New York because they have the new GM and see if you can try to twist his arm. But did you see Francesa talk to him?
Yeah, he ripped him apart.
He basically didn't cut it short, but they ended that interview very awkwardly, given that Francesa just tore into him for saying he had a good roster. So, again, I think the Mets have a good pitching staff. I'm not, obviously thrilled about their lineup, but, I mean, that's another possibility for Manny Machado. So maybe he'd go to – seems like he's interested in the city of New York if he's talking about the Yankees, but I don't know if he's chasing rings. I'm not sure what his interest will be in the Mets. I mean, he'd be a major piece in maybe turning things around, but and it sounds like the Aldersons are willing to spend finally. So – I don't know, but between the two of them, Samir, who do you think is more likely if we're talking Machado, Harper? If one were to go to the Yankees, who's that one?
Manny. I'm going with Manny.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. The only reason I hesitate on Harper is because of the first base thing, because I think the Yankees really want to believe in Luke Voit, but just given the fact that it was so short a sample size and he has so limited experience in the bigs.
Might just be a flash in the pan right there.
Right, and I think they're worried about that. And it'd be awesome if it wasn't, because he's just like this guy that came out of nowhere. He'd be a fan favorite in New York. Just
hell yeah. And he's also like a dope-ass dude. Like, he's like
cool
the guy that'll chug beers, during celebrations. He's like that lovable guy that's going to uplift the clubhouse. Even if he's not your starting first baseman, he's someone you got to keep around. I definitely prefer him over that diva Greg Bird. Get him out of New York.
You sound like Randy Levine. You sound like
I hate Randy Levine. I'm a Yankee fan. I hate Randy Levine.
Yeah, he's a guy who's very ego-driven and will put his say out there whether people want it or not. But
I think Greg Bird is done.
Greg Bird might be one of those guys who needs to go to a smaller market. I think he needs to be a player that goes to a different market, like an Oakland or something. And I heard there was interest in Sonny Gray's trade value by the way, which was surprising to me. I mean, hey. I like Sonny Gray's story. He took a lot of heat this year, and then they dug up old tweets on him and all that stuff. So I didn't know that he had any value really right now, but seems like I forget who reported it. Maybe it was Joel Sherman, and I'm just guessing. I can't remember the top of my head, but there was some rumblings that teams have asked about Sonny Gray. So maybe unloading him gets you at least some mid-level prospects back. I wouldn't expect too much, but again, maybe in some kind of big package blockbuster, you can kind of tag him in there as well and get something back. But at the end of the day, I mean, for me, I would agree with you. I think Machado's a little more likely, just given that there is a spot right now, as much as I hate to say it, for shortstop, because Didi's going into his last year of arbitration, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and he's hurt, which I hate. I really want to.
I love Didi. I hope they
want
keep him if they get Machado.
Asset.
I think they need to keep Didi around for the long haul.
Oh yeah, me too. He's a leader as well in that room. He's a fan favorite, and he's just a really good player. I mean, he's a guy that fits right in. But and I love him. I love his baseball character much more than I love Machado's.
I agree.
I
love Machado. I think he'd be a good villain type for the Yankees-Red Sox rivalry. But
right.
I mean, if I had to pick between Didi and Machado, performance aside, I'm picking Didi.
You got Machado spiking guys. You have him not hustling on certain plays. Like that to me is a couple of strikes against in terms of handing him a $35-40 million contract, whatever he's going to ask for. He's an unbelievable talent, but again, I kind of rather go with the Didi. I'd rather go with him, and I'd honestly rather go with starting pitching hard here in this offseason than either of those players. But I'll give you one sleeper. Eduardo Escobar. If you're looking for a guy, I don't know what he would imagine at 29. He's probably looking for some security as far as length goes. Maybe his value comes down, but he's an underrated shortstop in my mind that has some solid numbers. He's a switch hitter, hits well from the left. I think he was well over 300 against right-handed hitting this year. And has just been a guy that's hanging around and been a steady player. If you're looking for a short term, I don't know if he's going to take a short term.
No, he's not going to take a 1-year deal.
He's 30.
Yeah, he's going to look.
Oh no, I'm sorry. He agreed with a 3-year extension with the Diamondbacks. So take that off the table.
Yeah, that makes sense.
$21 million. That would have been a steal. $7 million a year. He must love it out there in Arizona because I think he's worth a little bit more than that. Maybe not, $20 million or anything like that, but he's a solid shortstop. So I remember when he was one of the better young prospects too. It didn't seem like that long ago, but
years fly, man. But I mean, the Yankees could just look to internally fill the shortstop hole with moving Glaber over and maybe go out and get a second baseman. We'll get to that, I guess, in a couple minutes, but let's get our final thoughts here. Where do you see Manny and Harper going, Tim?
Well, I know Philly's been talked about a lot. I think the Cubs will get Harper. I think
really.
I know they're dealing with their salary things, but maybe they make a move to open up some spots. I know a lot of Cubs fans out here in the Midwest, and they're pining hard that they go get Harper. I don't know. I just get this weird feeling that they might be the team that scoops him. And then let's just throw it for fun. I want to see Machado across town. I want to see him in the Mets. I want to see him get spurned by the Yankees, go to the Mets to try to be the villain there, and then see what happens. I mean, granted, again, great player. And he would help any team he goes to. But maybe he's got his heart set on New York, and I know Philly's hanging in there as well. They're floating around, and they're an attractive young team right now. And maybe they make a move to get one of those two. But to me, I don't know. I want to see some a little shakeup. I want to see someone go to the Mets for a change. I want to see them spend some money, see if there's a little fire now in New York in that side of town.
Nah, I don't see Harper going to the Cubs at all. I think they have way too much money tied up into different players. You still got Jason Hayward out there. You got Kyle Schwarber. His
they'd have to make
situation. His situation to deal with. I don't see Chicago being a realistic destination for Bryce Harper. I see Bryce Harper going to Philadelphia because they have a lot of money to spend, and they have some room in the outfield that they can plug him in Philadelphia. I see Harper going to Philadelphia, and I just see Manny Machado ending up in New York. I just don't know why. I just see that. I just see him happening. See that happening because he is tied with A-Rod. Even though A-Rod's not on the Yankees any longer, there are ties to that relationship there. I think, both of just that relationship alone will just end up with him being in New York. They need that A-Rod type of guy, that villain guy, to usher in this new era between the Yankees and Red Sox. And I don't think they're confident with Andujar being their everyday third baseman. I think Machado will step right in there, be the third baseman once Didi gets back from injury, or maybe Didi sides over to third. We'll cross that bridge when it gets there. But I feel like Andujar will be the everyday DH going forward in the Yankees, where he can play some third base and first base whenever he's needed there. But I think the Yankees might view him as a DH going forward.
It's tough. I mean, I might be more inclined to agree with you up until what Hal Steinbrenner said, basically coming out and openly criticizing him. And that, to me, to a guy who's as fiery as Machado, is going to turn him off a bit. I think the Yankees' DH situation as it is pretty crowded as well. I mean, you're kind of rotating your outfielders in and out of that spot. It may not last forever, but they seem pretty intent on giving days to Stanton and Judge where they can kind of just worry about hitting, especially Stanton. I don't know. I feel like while it's definitely a possibility, I think there's enough that Machado put on tape as far as just baseball character that just doesn't seem to fit what the Yankees want to do right now. In yesteryear, they would have been all over him immediately because of all of what you said, and it makes a lot of sense as it is, just in terms of fitting a need and ultimately, making the Yankees a better team. And George would have already had him signed. That would have been written in ink already. But to me, I don't know, the antics seem to be rubbing the Yankees higher-ups the wrong way, and I'm not totally dissatisfied with that. I mean, I think if you're building a young team, which, you can only say for so long. I mean, the Yankees are young in a lot of areas, but, you have a leadership core forming in Aaron Judge and Didi Gregorius, when, assuming he stays. You would imagine that Glaber kind of steps into that role, Miggy steps into that role as they move forward and kind of grow from there.
Gotta remember, though, Judge is the same guy that said that he wants Manny Machado in pinstripes.
It's true. I mean, look, there's a lot of pluses to it as well. I mean, that's the thing. I'm outlining the negatives just because I think...
Like, do you think a team would prefer 35-plus home runs and 100 plus RBI? Or somebody who hustles down the first base line like...
It's the Yankees. And the Yankees are a team that, again, when it hasn't been George was, yes, he had a standard, but he was also willing to get guys that were out of the way in terms of the pinstripe, code. And it's certainly, you go back to Babe Ruth, he was a party animal. He was a guy who doesn't necessarily meet the pristine image, and I always think that's overplayed as it is. But I think Hal Steinbrenner is trying to build a culture where the team isn't the team that's hated by everyone, and it's not because of that. It's because he just wants a group that works well together. And Brian Cashman, I think, would love to get Machado in pinstripes, but he might be as well. I don't know. I mean, it's not like it's... they've been called the baby bombers the last 2 years, but I think they're graduating. I think guys like Aaron Judge are graduating, and yes, Glaber and Miggy are both very young still. Luis Severino, very young still. So you could still call them that, but they're going to their third years, a lot of them. Not all of them, obviously. Miggy and Glaber, of course, second year, but Gary Sanchez is not a baby bomber in my eyes anymore. I mean, he's been in the farm system for God knows how long before he came up to the Yankees. It's like 6 years, and then came up and became Gary. And I think Gary and Judge have both moved on. They're veterans now of baseball, still young. But at the end of the day, I don't know. I get this weird vibe. And I certainly won't be surprised if Machado's wearing pinstripes in the next couple of weeks or months here, at a press conference. But I don't know. I feel like Hal wants to build his own legacy, and I think he wants to distance it from his dad's just because he wants to be known not as just George's son. He wants to be known as an owner that kind of put his own stamp on things. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I could be very wrong there.
I feel like I would agree with you, but at the same time, they made a trade for Giancarlo Stanton last year when they really didn't need to. I mean, sure,
Well,
he came cheap.
I think
cheap.
what they did when they found out Jeter was willing to deal him, I think Brian Cashman got on the phone immediately and said, "Hey, we can just basically get away with just giving him money, and we can get an MVP player, and all we have to do is fork over cash." I think they were like, "Okay, let's go get this dude," because how often is that going to happen? It's a huge salary, of course, but I just the one thing this is a very mini side tangent here, but I can't get over the fickleness and the pettiness sometimes of the Yankee fan base, and I'm one of them. But yes, he had a bad postseason, and yes, he was bad against Boston. But I mean, to have the backlash that Giancarlo got after the postseason, yes, criticism is fair, fine. But to immediately flame out on that trade and say, "Oh, it was such a bust," and "Oh, it was, why do we do it?" And to see so many fans do that, and there's always reactionary fans in every fan base, I get it, but to see some of the media echo that, and it's always been that way in the New York media. They try to capture the heart of the fans. It's, to me, is ridiculous. I mean, the guy was unbelievable when a lot of other players were slumping in the summer.
He carried the team for a stretch in August.
He did. And through June and July and August, he was hitting like 330. And it's like...
And that's not enough. They'll start booing him on opening day if he doesn't hit a home run or something.
It's just... And I understand. Yeah, he's held to a higher standard because of what he's making. I get that. But it's not like we gave up the world for him. You got to be kidding me with this. Again, with the Yankee fandom can be ridiculous sometimes. And again, I say that as a Yankee fan.
I totally agree with you. I've been on record saying that too. That they're so quick to jump on certain players.
Oh God. And you know what? It's always been that way. It's always been that way with the Yankees. There's such a high standard and a high expectation. But it's just at some point it's ridiculous. And that's I think. Again, and it all comes back to what players are paid, but to me, it's pretty absurd. So I mean, again, I think the biggest priority, and they've said it, they've come out and said, is they're going to go look for pitching, and that's what they need. They need to build the top three. I'm okay with Masahiro Tanaka as your third pitcher. I think that's a really good one. If they can get a legitimate ace, so be it. If Luis Severino's the guy, I think, again, a lot of his flaws are correctable. You heard all the stuff about pitch tipping there at the end of the year, unfortunately. But if that was really the reason for a lot of his issues, he had some command issues as well for a stint in the second half of the season. But if the biggest reason was because he was tipping his pitches, I'm actually somewhat okay with that because that's pretty easy to fix, as opposed to some other issues that could be. I mean, maybe they are. But for me, I think the Yankees have to come away with a pitcher for their top three of their rotation.
Even get the swing of trade. Like, what if they got creative here and call it the Nationals, who could be a team that's rebuilding, and say, hey, we'll take Scherzer, we'll take all your money, and we'll give you like Clint Frazier or something, and maybe a couple other guys.
It might take a little more than that.
But, I mean, if the Yankees are willing to eat up his contract, this dude is 34 years old. So, and he's owed a lot of money. So maybe if the Yankees would be like, we'll eat up all his salary, we just won't give you as many prospects. Or maybe the Nationals come back and say, we'll eat some of his salary, but you give us some prospects. I think there could be a match made there because Max Scherzer still got some good pitching left in him to carry a team like the Yankees. And if you saw him up there with Severino and Tanaka, I think that all of a sudden makes the Yankees that much more of a threat in the postseason. And he'll come at a cheaper price than Jacob deGrom because he's 4 years older and he's on a big salary, whereas Jacob deGrom, still a couple of years of arbitration left, and he's only 30.
Well, and I also think with the Mets hiring his former agent, just former, because you have to give that up when you get hired as GM, obviously, I would imagine they're going to work out a long-term deal there in New York. I think the Mets want him there. I think they made that clear by not dealing him at the deadline. Same with Syndergaard. I think they're going to wait a little longer on him because I think of his health.
And the Mets actually played better in the second half last year. They were not a bad baseball team. They had Zach Wheeler as their third starter.
I think they could make a case. They need some youth in certain spots. They have Nimmo. Maybe Conforto can find his game again, but I think they can make a case to a guy like Manny Machado. I'm not saying, I know I said I want to see him go there, but, it's still, to me, obviously not a guarantee by any stretch.
But I mean,
you can make a
Scherzer.
case. They have a pitching staff. That's the thing, is they do have pitching. You saw guys like Zach Wheeler turn it on in the second half of the year. I mean,
He was
he's
dominant.
been solid, but he cranked it up another level in that second half and in parts of the summer. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like the Mets have some tantalizing pieces, but at the end of the day, they need to get some injection there, and like they did with Cespedes. Initially, it was a big move, and obviously that's had some big repercussions since he's been injured so much, and hasn't been the player they paid him to be. But I think the Aldersons do have to circle back and try to pay a little more money. They're a New York team, after all. And they have a budget they can build on. To the players they need to bring in to turn their team around. And like you said, they did show some signs there in the second half of the year. But, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting offseason, that's for sure.
I agree. But the Yankees don't land either Harper or Machado. Who else do you think they can get?
Well, I mean, I detailed a couple of the ones I would like as far as pitchers go. I mean, Corbin and Keuchel both.
I'm talking, like, in this sense, I'm talking more in terms of, like, positional players. Like, more specifically, like the shortstop or the
Steve
second
Pearce,
base.
so you can beat him up for winning the World Series for Boston. No, if you're talking shortstop,
or second base,
I was going to say, if you want to talk second base, I saw someone suggest, and this would kill Mets fans, and I don't know how I feel about it. Not Neil Walker, I apologize. Daniel Murphy. I'm getting my ex-Mets mixed up.
Daniel Murphy.
Obviously, he thrived with Bryce Harper, and I wonder if he'll follow Bryce if there's a spot where they can, afford both.
Maybe Philly.
Maybe the Yankees bring them both in, because that was the greatest thing to ever happen to Daniel Murphy. And I know there's things with Daniel Murphy, things he said that have obviously drawn a lot of controversy for some of his beliefs. And that's one of those things that, like it or not, either way, is going to play somewhat of a role in certain markets and not so much in others. But he exploded with the Nationals when he was there. And
problem with him though is that he's so injury prone.
Yeah, and he's not a defensive player.
And he's like towards the back end of his career. I don't think he's got much left. I mean, he can fill in, maybe be a DH every now and then, but I don't see him being your solution at second base.
It's more or less if the Yankees are willing to. They really don't have to. They don't have to sacrifice for offense. They have plenty of it, even if Didi's out. And there's others. I mean, Brian Dozier's out there, DJ LeMahieu. Those guys are second basemen that could push Glaber to the shortstop spot.
But they're also going to probably demand a bigger payday. I think they're going to look for multi-year contracts. I mean,
long-time producers.
It's possible.
I got my guy taken in what's his name? I already forgot it because I was so upset.
You know who I can see though?
Who's that?
I can actually see the Yankees bringing back Robinson Cano in this instance. Hear me out here. They still got Jacoby Ellsbury's salary, and he will accept the trade to Seattle because he's from Oregon. So the Yankees could say, okay, if you take on Jacoby Ellsbury, we'll take back Robinson Cano, and you won't have to eat those 2 years of his salary. But this is where it's going to get tricky. The Yankees, Seattle's going to want to get rid of Cano because of the whole PD thing. I'm sure they just want to get rid of him as, any possible cost just to reset the culture there. And Cano's a beloved Yankee. Let's be real here. We all got mad at him for leaving, but you got to understand that he got what's his. It's a business, and Seattle just gave him more money and more years, so he's going to go there. But Cano wanted to stay in New York all along. That's where his heart was. But the Yankees were not willing to meet his asking price. So eventually he had to do what's best for him. But there have been rumors since he's been out in Seattle that he wants to go back to the Yankees. He misses New York. He misses the fact that, there's a good, Latin American culture or not even American, like a good Latino community in the Bronx and New York City in general. I think he misses that fact. I think he felt at home there because, it's just very diverse in the Bronx and all of New York City. Whereas in Seattle, it's not as diverse as New York City. I think he would really like to be part of that environment again, and just being familiar with Yankee Stadium and the crowd. I think he misses all of that. So I think that would make more sense for Cano. I think he would very much welcome a return to the Yankees, and here's why it makes sense for the Yankees because Cano can still play defense at second base. He's still better than Daniel Murphy can provide for them
Yeah.
at second base. He can still fill in. And then, when Didi eventually returns and Gleyber Torres eventually returns, Cano can give you defense all over the field. He can play you some third base, some second base, and some first base whenever guys need days off. And then he can fill in at DH whenever, there are at bats to be had. He can kind of become a super utility guy for the Yankees. He'll play any position. He can probably play a little left or right field in a pinch if he the Yankees desperately needed. Not that they would need him at those corner outfield spots, but in an emergency, I feel like he could play in either left or right field. But I feel like a lot of his at bats, once Didi comes back, will come at first base, where there will be at bats to be had because I'm not convinced that Luke Voigt's the answer at every day for first base, so he platooned them a little bit. There'll be plenty of at bats to go around for Cano in New York, and if Seattle's willing to eat that contract, where they're the Yankees have the leverage in that situation. It'll be like, eat some of that money in 2020 to 2023, and we have ourselves a deal because this whole PED thing definitely opens up leverage for the Yankees to bring him back at the cost that they want. And then once they get him in, he can move all around, and he'll be a pretty good solution for the Yankees, where they won't have to tie up years into him at this point, whereas they would with Machado. This obviously happens, in my opinion, if they don't get Machado. Like, this could happen if they don't get Machado. Machado would demand at least a 10-year deal. He's 26. I'll give him that. He's still pretty young, so that would not be a bad investment. But suppose they don't go that route. Cano's 36 right now, but he's still got plenty of good baseball left in him. And in his later years, you can slide him as a first baseman or DH, and he's somebody that seems like he can be consistently healthy throughout his later years. He's somebody who has given you pretty much 162 games every year. There are a couple years, sure, he didn't play 162 games, but for the most part, he's been consistently healthy throughout his career. The only thing that stopped him this year was being suspended, but I firmly believe, especially, if his story was true, that he was taking a diuretic. I don't fully know, what the situation there. He might be innocent, he might not be, but regardless, he served an 80-game suspension, and as long as he doesn't keep doing it, just, bring him back for nostalgic sake, too. There's still a lot of Cano fans in here. It makes sense for the, community as well. I'm still got some friends in this area, I'm sure, and, overall, I just think it'd be a good baseball fit.
He can still play. That's the thing. But the money, as you said, would have to make sense. And I think, again, you kind of have that role filled pretty well with Gardner and with CC for at least the next year. And that they're both on one-year deals. And I think there's a lot of leadership there. And it would be interesting to certainly see Cano come home to New York as far as his baseball roots come from. But I don't know. It's still shocking to me that he's 36 already. But the money would have to make sense. Again, you'd have to leverage some kind of deal with Ellsbury, which you make some interesting points there. Would certainly potentially make some enticing offer for the Yankees side of things. The Mariners, though, to give up on a player who still has something to offer, granted with the PEDs and all that, that certainly not had the reputation stand as much as they would have liked, of course, since his arrival. I mean, he certainly has been a good player for them, but again, the Mariners haven't really been a good team as long as they've been turning the corner, it seems, but as you said, they might be looking to shake things up as far as getting some older guys out on big contracts. I don't know that they would take an older guy back who's barely played in the last couple seasons for the Yankees and Ellsbury, but I don't know. Maybe there's some way to make it work.
I mean, the thing is with Ellsbury is that he can still contribute when he's healthy. The thing is, he hasn't been healthy, but when he is healthy, he contributes. This year he wasn't healthy, but I feel like a new situation in Seattle would kind of reinvigorate him a little bit. He's only 35 years old still. He's not that old. I mean, he's old, but he's not terribly old, especially if you get him on a 2-year deal. in Seattle, there's a bigger ballpark, so that'll play better to his abilities. He's a bigger ballpark player, even though Fenway Park wasn't big. It wasn't big. He still like used those features like the Green Monster and some of the bigger gaps in Fenway Park to his advantage.
Gap hitter.
Yeah, exactly. He's a gap hitter, so he'll get his doubles. He can turn some into triples. Still, his speed is still probably somewhat there. So, and then also defensively too. He can still give you some good defense as a center fielder in Seattle. I think, he would add a lot to that team if he can stay healthy, which is not a given. But even if he can give you like 100 games, per season in the next 2 years, I think it's still worth the investment for them.
Samir, I have a mission for you. You got to go find Hal. You gotta meet him somewhere near Secaucus and buy him the most expensive liquor you can get. I'll loan you. I'll pitch in as well. I'll do my part, and at the end of the night, you will have Bryce Harper, Manny Machado. And we'll have Andrew Miller back, even though I don't believe he. What's his deal? I haven't even looked. Is he even? I thought he was a free agent this year.
I believe Miller will be back. I believe he'll be back. He's a free agent.
Is that next year? He's a free agent?
No, this year. This year.
Is it? I haven't even seen.
I believe he's going to be
lists.
back.
Oh, yep. This year.
I believe he's going to be back. They're going to let David Robertson walk in free agency. He had an up and down at best second tenure with the Yankees.
Yeah,
but
he was a little shaky in this time around, and it's funny. There's a lot of good relievers on the market, but
I think they're going to bring back Andrew Miller. I've maintained from day one that the Yankees will let him go for now, but when he becomes available the second time around, he's coming back.
It's possible. It's very possible. Lefty again. That's the big thing. But no, come back with Harper, Machado, Andrew Miller. We'll get
By the way,
Corbin
Mike
to the building.
Francesa.
Blast the Darth Vader theme music every inning of every game, every bat flip imaginable between Gary Sanchez, Bryce Harper, Manny Machado, Giancarlo. We're just going to just bat flip the bats out of the building. They're going to be thrown. It'll be like Key and Peele touchdown celebration level. We'll bring that to baseball, and the evil empire will be back.
I hope that added some good dramatics to what you were saying.
Yeah. No, it's.
But no, by the way, Mike Francesa said he believes that the Yankees are going to end up with both Bryce Harper and Manny Machado.
I mean, that team would be unreal. I would worry about, even for the Yankees, the financial implications.
Oh, yeah.
Because you don't have Judge on a long-term deal. You don't have.
I don't know why Mike Francesa would suggest something like that so openly. I mean. I guess he has a gut feeling, but
George Steinbrenner would have done it. That's the thing. He would have done it.
True.
And I'm not necessarily advocating for it because I think you can win championships without having to do that. But it's still, I just laugh because it would just be like it'd be Warriors level, if not beyond Warriors level, of not giving an F. About what people think. It'd just be like, come get some. You just stack a lineup.
In all fairness, DeMarcus Cousins took a $5 million deal on a 1 year.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. He took a discount. But
so did Kevin Durant, actually. Kevin Durant took discounted 1-year deals.
Yeah, so he knows he can prove he can. We talked about it back in one of the old episodes. He can prove himself, look good on a good team, and then hit market again and double back and get big money again. But I just laugh because it would just be shameless, just going out and just signing both of them and then landing some other big pitcher and just be just rolling up with an all-star team every year, just playing it. And I say that's completely
now starting for the AL All-Star team.
It would be the Yankees and the Red Sox. It'd just be those two teams.
Basically. And then you have Blake Snell maybe starting.
Yeah, that's true.
Yo, Blake Snell.
Hey, you never know. Those Rays, they were on a tear in the second half, too.
They're dangerous. I feel like Oakland was a
surprising team.
Oakland was a fluke this year. I'm going to say that right now.
Who's that?
Oakland.
I was funny you mentioned that. I was about to think about getting Moneyball. I have 1 or 2 more things to do for work that I just about finished before I got on the air here. But we have a game tomorrow. But Yeah, Moneyball popped up on my suggested movies, and I was like, oh man, gotta love it. That's one of the great ones.
It is a great movie, but they were a fluke this year. They did not even look like a team that had a chance to beat the Yankees.
I want a Billy Beane sequel. I think he said no. He said he or Brad Pitt, one of the two, said there's not going to ever be a sequel. But if the A's somehow win a World Series while Billy Beane's still there, I'd love to see a sequel. I'd love to see a reprisal of Billy Beane's role. I mean, Brad Pitt's role as Billy Beane, and I just love that movie. It's just so cool to see granted, obviously, a lot of Hollywood liberties were taken and condensing things, which you have to do in any movie, but it would be cool. It would be cool.
Yeah, I agree with that. It'd be interesting to see.
Yes, it would. Well, Samir, I know I've taken up a good chunk of your time.
No, not at all,
it's
man.
11 o'clock on your end of the country.
Yeah.
Here in the middle, it's just 10, so I'm a little fortunate in that regard. But, it's great to get back on the air. And
it is, man. It felt great.
I think we killed a good 2 hours and change here. I think we right about 2 hours, I think. I don't know. You have... recording.
We've been talking for like 3.5 hours, so.
No, well, yeah, we had the.
Yeah, we talked. We caught up for like an hour, so probably
catching up.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, it's a time well spent.
Absolutely, as always, man. I wish we had more in-person interactions, but given that we both live in different parts of the country now, we don't get to see each other. But hey, when you're back here, brother, we're gonna party hard. You know that.
Of course. I can't wait.
Oh yeah, I'll have plenty of steam to blow off by then.
Gotta love it. Well,
oh man,
I think
it felt great talking to you, though.
This was a good one.
Yes, it was.
Gonna be fun to go back through it.
We picked up right where we left off, in my opinion. Yeah. We didn't miss a beat. I think our chemistry is still there, and I love seeing that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Hell yeah, man. We got to get back at this, man. We got to do it.
Yep. No, you're right. You are right.
Well, we can close out this episode right now. On behalf of Tim Mohop and I, thank you for listening to another episode of Shooting the Breeze. It's been a little while, but, we're always going to be here for you as much as we can. Both of us are now working full time, so, times it may be hard, but we're going to try to get back at it, and we're going to try to be consistent with it and, give you some great-ass content. All right, folks, take it easy. And, Tim, any closing words for you?
I'm just happy to be back, and my probably need to be changed sign-off on my broadcast is enjoy the best of the rest of your evening. I don't even know. I'm not even competent right now.
We talked so much where I was like, I didn't even know how to close it out. I'll try it again. On behalf of Tim Mohop and I, thank you for listening, and we're gonna get back at it, and we're gonna be strong. Peace out.
We'll see you next time.